Hey everyone! So today we're going to chat about this new story that just dropped. I gotta admit, at first I wasn't too into it, but around chapter 2 the story really takes off in a crazy way. Someone suggested it on our Discord. So if you've got a story you want us to check out, hop into our Discord, the link's in the description. The story kicks off with a car speeding and hitting some old dude. The old guy starts complaining, kind of implying he jumped in front of the car on purpose. In the back seat of the car is our main guy Luke, just watching it all go down. The old man starts demanding like $100 grand to take care of his leg. So our hero tells his guys to hand over a briefcase full of cash, and the old dude's super happy, thanking him and everything. Turns out the old guy knew the kid was Luke and that he came from a rich, famous family. But what he didn't expect was for Luke to come back in the car right after. Luke's like, it wasn't fair giving him the money because he wasn't even hurt, so his legs need to be broken. Then Luke tells his guys to grab the old dude, who starts complaining again and then suddenly takes off running, saying he's all better now. Luke's driver mentions he's blowing through cash like crazy, and he's already spent over 300 grand today. He suggests Luke should invest some of that money, or he's gonna run out. And that's exactly what Luke decides to do. That's when we start to get Luke's deal. This story is actually an isekai. Our main character died and ended up in a world kinda like ours. But he was reborn as a weak kid, and now he needs to spend as much cash as possible to get his strength back. And since he's become this kid who just blows money, he's got the nickname Prodigal Son. If you don't know, prodigal is someone who spends way more than they need to, a total spender. If that's you, let me know in the comments. Later on, Luke goes back home. His family's crazy rich and powerful, so he's already got an arranged marriage lined up. Just looking at Luke, you can tell he's not thrilled at all. But, on the other hand, his fiancée, Julia, is really pretty. Luke's mom keeps bugging him to meet his fiancée, and when he hears fiancée, he just freezes up. The girl's seriously good looking and a little shy too. One of her relatives mentions that this marriage was set up before he was even born, and the old lady even pats Julia, telling her to go see her fiancé. She wasn't expecting the guy's family to be so weird, and she's kind of sulking about it. Right then, Luke realized he was in paradise. He went from a boring life to being a millionaire kid. The only downside was that he wasn't in great shape. When Julia looks at Luke's face, she gets suspicious because he seemed weaker than she'd heard. So, the story goes back 10 minutes, showing Julia arriving at the Hong family's mansion. Her dad had told her she was going to marry the youngest son of this family, and he wasn't in the best health. She's a bit sad thinking her dad's using her as a bargaining chip, but he says it's not like that. Just a marriage between families to boost business, so yeah, it's a trade, basically. She was a little bummed, thinking her parents didn't really care about her. Then she decides to get into character, determined to make Luke fall for her to help her family with this marriage. Suddenly, Luke says out loud that he's not interested in her, and that makes her mad. Since the young master's not interested in me, I'll just leave. Their parents are all worried, right? Julia's dad wanted the Hong family's money, and Luke's dad wanted his son to at least get married because he thought he was a failure. Luke's mom says he doesn't get to choose anything, and they decide he's got no say. He's marrying her. End of story. Julia, though, got her ego bruised because she got rejected. Luke's mom ends up giving him a card with 300 grand on it to buy the girl a gift. And so they head downtown. Inside the car, it's super quiet, and they don't say a word to each other. In Luke's head, he thinks the girl's trying to scam him because he's got this fragile health, so he decides he's going to scam her instead. He tells her to pick whatever gift she wants, no big deal, and she agrees, saying she'll go pick something out. After a few minutes, she comes back with a little rock that only cost 310 bucks. He's surprised because he thought she was going to try to squeeze him for money. Where do you want to go now? He asks. To the precious stone store, she says. He doesn't really get it, but he takes her there anyway. As soon as they get there, she shows the little rock she bought in the square to the jewelry store owner. He's blown away because that stone had disappeared during the Fifth World War. Yeah, guys, this story takes place in another universe where the Fifth World War already happened, while we're here just heading towards the Third. He offers a ton of money, and Julia agrees, leaving our hero a little confused. He doesn't get how she bought a rock for 300 bucks and sold it for 3 million. She asks why he's making that face. No way, honey, I just want to know how you figured out that rock was legendary? He realizes this is a great chance to make some cash. Before he was dissing his fiancée, now he's all over her. Truth is, if he kept spending money like he was, his reserves would dry up real quick and he wouldn't be able to level up in his cultivation system. So, he swallows his pride and asks Julia to teach him how to make more money. He spills the beans that he's got the prodigal son title and only knows how to spend money, so he needs his fiancée's help to raise some funds. What do you think about our deal? You make the money for me, and I'll let you spend it on whatever you want, he proposes. She says she doesn't really care, and it's all the same to her. Just then, something catches Julia's eye. It was a restaurant employee kicking out some people who looked kinda poor. They got booted from the restaurant for not having enough money. The employee even says that place isn't for poor workers, that it's a 5-star hotel serving fancy lunch. The poor folks leave, totally humiliated. They end up going to another restaurant saying they heard the place serves great food. The hotel owner says the restaurant's closed and they've already finished serving for the day. Actually, her hotel's going bankrupt because some 3-star hotel is snatching up all the customers in the area. They're furious because the people at that hotel are pretty arrogant. Suddenly, someone shows up saying they're going to save the restaurant. Our hero says he'd like to buy the hotel along with the restaurant on the first floor. The woman gets all excited because she's going to get rid of this headache and says she'll sell it for $1 million. He says he'll pay $3 million because he wants to keep all the employees, and the rest of the money's for buying new equipment and ingredients. Luke, feeling like the biggest investor ever, says he's going to make a ton of money with these deals. And to celebrate the new management, he's going to give away 10 days of free food to anyone who comes to his restaurant. Julia even asks if he's sure about giving away free food for 10 days, and he says yeah. She's confused, not understanding why he's doing this. 3 days go by, and the hotel restaurant is packed. People are saying this restaurant's way better than that 3-star one that opened across the street. Meanwhile, that employee who treated the poor people badly is getting fired because he couldn't bring in new customers. The scene goes back to the Hong mansion, and while our main character's meditating, his maids are changing his bed sheets. He ends up activating the prodigal system and gets surprised because his stats went up, all thanks to the money he blew earlier today. He gained 10 points in strength, speed, reflexes, and health, but he was still a long way from being a normal, healthy person. Someone calls him from the other side of the door. It was his fiancée, and she wanted to talk to him. Luke asks if she'd like to spend some money tonight, but she says she has class early tomorrow. Since he'd only been in this world for a few days, he didn't know that this body was still in school, and Julia says they have class together and are in the same school. "Oh yeah, of course, I forgot," he replies. She says she's going to sleep to get some rest because she needs her beauty sleep and says goodnight to him in a pretty seductive way. "I need to spend more money to revitalize my body," he thinks. The next morning, the scene changes to the school. Luke arrives in his car along with his fiancée Julia. She was really pretty and caught everyone's attention. Some people start making fun of our hero just because he's in bad shape. One of the bullies says our main character is not worthy of studying at this school. Luke asks Julia who that guy is, and she says he's a bully from the Liu family. The girl goes over to talk to the bully, but Luke steps in front to protect her. The bully immediately goes after our hero, acting all cocky. But since our main character leveled up last night, he managed to dodge the attack, and with his cane he ends up hitting the bully's ankle, making him fall into the trash can. His friends try to get him out of there, and it was pretty humiliating. He's even a little sulky about it. Some people around start making fun of the bully, saying Master Liu got a taste of his own medicine. Then right after, he goes after Luke, saying he's going to end him. But Luke was a smart kid, you know? He just falls on the ground and pretends he was badly beaten by the bully, and Julia goes over to protect her fiancé, saying that guy was a shameless jerk and beat up a disabled person, and Luke keeps faking it. He's surprised because Julia was there to protect him. The people around start saying Master Liu is a coward because he was beating up someone weaker. "He's faking it, I barely touched him," the bully says. He walks up to Luke and says he's going to ruin his life next time. "Oh, is he threatening me?" Thanks to the scene Luke makes, the bully kneels on the ground, apologizes, says he'll give compensation, pulls $1 million out of his pocket, and leaves a little angry. Our hero takes the card with $1 million and says it's his lucky day. He thanks Julia for worrying about him, and she says she just didn't want her dad to worry because she couldn't save her fiancé. At the same time, she thanks him for stepping in front to protect her and gets embarrassed. "But of course I was going to protect you, you're my fiancé," he says, and she totally melts. After school, they decide to go out and blow the money. Luke says they've already spent a lot on that last hotel they bought and that they should look for another place to spend even more. "If you want to spend money, just go to Brazil and buy a tray of eggs." She says they need to think a little more before just blowing money, and that sometimes they just need to wait for opportunities to knock. Just then, the car stops, because there's someone on the bridge. Julia opens the car door and gets surprised because there really was a girl on the bridge ready to jump. Maybe this was the opportunity that knocked on Luke's door. The girl was singing, about to jump off the bridge, and ended up looking at our hero and Julia. After a while, they manage to convince the girl to come down. Luke tries to make a not very funny joke to cheer her up, but Julia tells him to shut up. The girl thanks them for their kindness in trying to help, but says there's nothing they could do. Julia wanted to know what was going on in the girl's life and said that if it was a money problem, she and her fiancé could help. She explains that her name is Nara and that she has a band with 2 other friends. This catches Luke and Julia's attention since it was an all-girl band. But they signed a contract with a manager who was messing up their career. Plus, Nara's mom was sick. She took out a loan to pay for treatment, and now she owed money to loan sharks. Basically, the girl's life was in the toilet. Right then, Julia starts looking at Luke, and he asks, "Why are you looking at me?" "Nothing, I just want you to help her." "Okay, what are you thinking?" she replies. Julia starts whispering her plan in Luke's ear, and he agrees. She wanted to invest in the girl's band. Luke thinks, "I've got more than enough money. I can pay for your mom's treatment, pay off the loan you took out, and invest in your music career." Poor Nara gets all happy and says she'll tell her friends the news. 3 days later, the girls were doing a show that our hero had set up. It was a free show, and people were celebrating. They weren't even famous, and people were impressed because their songs were really good. Julia asks Luke where all these people came from, and he says he doesn't really know either. She also mentions that she doesn't like noisy places, because she's more of a homebody and doesn't like going out much. Right then, they start singing their hit, the band's main song, and the crowd starts jumping like crazy. And the song really was good. It just wasn't doing that well because of their manager. Everyone starts saying this is crazy, such a good show, and it's free. And that's how everyone starts shouting the band's name. Even people outside on the street get curious and come into the stadium. Besides being beautiful, they were super talented, and the news about this band starts spreading online. The next day, they were there doing another show, and on the third day, the crowd was still going wild. By the third day, Julia was totally into it, all excited. Our main character's even a little surprised since she said she was a quiet girl. News of this band spreads throughout China, and the girl's manager starts getting annoyed, asking who gave them permission to do this show. Right after those 3 days of shows, they thank Master Luke. They bow, saying that if it weren't for him and Julia, they wouldn't have saved their career. He says they're already super popular online, that they can now pursue their career on their own, but they don't want to and keep saying they have a contract with that manager and that he's a total jerk. They wanted Luke to be their new manager, but they had a contract that prevented it. Julia asks if they couldn't just tear up the contract, but Nara says the contract has a 30 million clause. That leaves Luke paralyzed because he doesn't have all that cash. To try to raise money, he goes to the hotel he bought with the intention of selling it. He goes to that 3-star hotel across the street to try to offer them his hotel. But when he gets there, the hotel owner says the 3-star hotel was bankrupt, and Luke ends up buying that hotel too. His intention was to sell his hotel, not buy another one. But since it was so cheap, he ended up buying it. His new secretary arrives there. Her name was Sheila, and now that he owned this 3-star hotel, she says she'll work for him. She brings the news that this 3-star hotel had a debt of 50 million. And remember that all this was thanks to him buying the other hotel across the street and ending up breaking this one. So, investment skills 0. Where are you going? We need money to break the girl's contract. But Julia didn't know how to do that, and says she'll think about it later. Back at his mansion, he activates the prodigal system again. He's going to update to see if his stats have improved. Since he hadn't spent that much money, it only went up 7 points, but that was enough for him to reach level 1. Now he'd gained a new ability. He could possess the mind of some animals that weighed up to 10 kgs. He gets all excited and starts using his power to see if there are any animals nearby. He scans all the rooms in his mansion and ends up realizing that his mom's kitten was there. Right then, he goes into the body of this cat. Now he could see with her eyes and hear with her ears. He sees that Julia was coming towards him and she crouches down to play with the kitten. He's liking getting attention from Julia and realizes that this angle was perfect, and when he looks up, he has a heavenly view. This guy's pretty shameless, folks. Keep watching because this crazy guy isn't a wimp like the other main characters, I guarantee you. This story is top-notch. 3 days later, our hero gets the news that he was rejected. The manager of the girls' band didn't want to talk to him. The secretary also says that now that the hotel has lost its popularity, it's not attracting more customers. And Julia says he's just reaping what he sowed since he bought the other hotel and ended up destroying this one. And therefore, he wasn't going to be able to sell the hotel to pay for the band's contract. He starts pulling out his hair right there, trying to understand how he was going to raise that cash. Since the popularity of this hotel was falling and the ratings were also plummeting, they weren't going to be able to sell this hotel even with prayer. He asked Julia to come up with a strategy to make this hotel return to the popularity it had had before. Since he didn't know how to invest and only knew how to spend money, his head ends up frying. Then Julia has a brilliant idea and says there's another way to get what they want. Actually, they didn't need to pay the 30 million from the contract. They just needed to get another bargaining chip. For those who know it clicked its lyrics, right folks? He had gone to that company where that guy is the manager and has his headquarters. He tells his driver he's going to take a nap in front of this building and that he doesn't need to worry. He uses this as an excuse to go into the mind of the cat and, that way, jumps out of the car window and goes towards the company. Julia had given the idea that he just needed to get a bargaining chip, in other words, find some dirt on the manager and blackmail him. I'm telling you, this girl has a wicked mind. He keeps thinking about it, right? Look for some dirt on this manager. Since he had this power to go inside the cat, it was super easy to try to spy on him. He keeps looking for an opening to get into the building and ends up jumping through a window and then walks through the hallways. First of all, he wanted to find the boss's office and ends up looking there on the sign where there was some information to call the elevator, and the kitten jumps there and presses the button, and yet it ends up working. A minute later, he finds the president's office, and luckily the door was open. He starts spying secretly with a camera attached to his neck, and in the back of the room there was his computer. He even thinks that that was too easy, since he managed to infiltrate in just a few minutes. Luke starts rummaging through the computer, but it was password protected, so he wasn't going to find anything. He even thinks about what other evidence might be in this office. After calming down, he can hear some noise coming from the hallway. Remember that cat's hearing is much better than humans, so he knew perfectly where that noise was coming from, and he knew there were other people on this floor. That way, he jumps and runs and starts following that noise. It was a woman screaming, and the shameless manager was hooking up with his sister-in-law. This was great dirt for our hero to film there with his camera hidden on his neck, and that's exactly what he does. The next day, he wakes up all excited and asks the secretary to send that video to the band's manager and ask him to tear up Julia's contract. She gets all curious to know, and he even mentions that he won't have to spend a penny. "Seriously? Tell me right away what you found out?" she asks. "I'll only tell you if you call me darling," he teases. She was too proud for that, and keeps saying she doesn't want to know, but he ends up telling her and says he found a video of the manager hooking up with his sister-in-law and his brother's sister. He was a very powerful manager, so the guy was going to give in. Julia wanted to know how he found out about these recordings, and he said he had his own ways. A few hours later, the manager and his company ends up letting out a scream. He was extremely furious and starts asking the security team how someone invaded the building. The security guard says that a cat wandered through the hallways, and that makes the madman extremely furious. He had torn up the contract, but now he was going to try to find out who was behind all this. He promises that he will find whoever was blackmailing him. Later that same day, the female band was doing a show. They started gathering several fans from all over the country, and people go crazy just hearing them sing. This show is being done in Luke's 3-star building, and people start commenting that this hotel is very good. It was offering free shows and also several drinks. And up there was our main character, watching everything. Julia asks if this marketing choice of theirs was working, but she comments that this girl's band may end up being the solution. He thinks that just these shows won't be enough to recover the hotel's reputation. So he calls his assistant and tells her to prepare a free banquet for 3 days. Julia starts thinking that our main character doesn't change his mind and that he only thinks about spending money. But he said that this won't be a waste of money, no, because it will improve the hotel's reputation and they will go back to having customers. And meanwhile, the show is happening down there. During the show's break, the employee goes to the stage and explains that there will be a free banquet for 3 days. And people start saying that this hotel has gone back to being managed by a great businessman, and that they will rate it with a 5-star rating on the internet application. At that moment, a chubby guy ends up appearing. This was a pair of brothers, known for always starting fights, and to make matters worse, they always appeared at events that had free food. If the food didn't please them, the guys would destroy the whole place, the pothead. He says that the chefs are already preparing a great banquet, and that way everyone goes to the hotel door trying to enter the restaurant. People weren't putting much faith in it, but when they enter inside, everyone is surprised. Luke had organized master barbecue chefs, and the pothead says that people themselves could prepare their meats, but if they wanted, the chef would serve them personally. The person starts observing those skewers and says that the food looks delicious. When those fat brothers bite the first piece, they comment that it was delicious and start making the biggest scandal, saying that they had never tasted something so delicious, and they even run away saying that they will never forget that taste. Because of that, people start shouting, saying that the food must be wonderful, and our hero is up there watching everything. Even his fiancée, Julia, was eating that, saying that it was very tasty, and that she had never tasted anything like it. He said that this barbecue was a secret recipe from the world where he came from, and we already imagined that this guy probably came from Brazil, since here we have the best barbecues. Later he returns to his mansion, and he will check the points he earned in the prodigal system. He was getting stronger, but he still wasn't strong enough. Someone ends up knocking on the door and he asks who it was. Julia said it's her and tells him to open the door soon. And when he opens, the girl was all angry outside. She says that he isn't Luke and keeps questioning our main character. He says that it's him, yes, but the girl says that the Luke she knows is a complete jerk and pushes our hero, saying that he was actually an imposter. The girl throws the poor guy on the floor and ends up climbing on top of him. I'm sure you would be all happy in a situation like this. She says that the real Luke doesn't understand anything about investments and only knows how to lose money, but he said that he really doesn't know how to make any investments. No, he was just following the tips she gave, and even said that he only started to be lucky to earn money after he started listening to her advice. Now she slaps his hand, telling him not to try to caress her, and that she'll be careful if he is lying. Luke says that he is not lying, and that he will continue to follow all her advice. After all, they were a couple. The girl gets up and says that he is very smart, and even says that tomorrow is her day off, and that she wants to go shopping, and he says that it's all good. So we finally arrived the next morning, and there were the two in the park, enjoying the day. Luke, like a good simp, was trying to please Julia in the best way possible, and the madman already goes straight putting the whole hot dog in his mouth. I know, it's not Luke, but his fiancée takes the snack from him and the boy wonders what happened. She had taken Luke's hot dog to give to a puppy on the street, and he cries, saying that he was starving. At that moment, someone very rich ends up appearing, and as soon as they get out of the car, they start making fun of our hero. Luke looks with a very bored face like, who are these guys there? And the purple-haired girl asks if that was his fiancée, and she even seems to be nice and keeps saying that Julia was very beautiful because this other boy keeps saying that she's a poor person, and that she will only marry the Hong family because her father was a friend of our hero. That girl there is very beautiful, but none compare to you. Maria, you are beautiful. He kept hitting on his own cousin. You already see the level of this guy. They start making fun of our hero in the biggest ways possible. And he starts to get nervous because he doesn't even know these guys, and they already arrived there with all the intimacy. First of all, who are you? And secondly, why are you babbling in my face? He asks. A kid already starts throwing a tantrum, and actually they were our hero's cousins. But he didn't remember since he had just been reborn into this body. Luke asked Julia if she knew them, and she said yes, since it was our hero's family. And he starts to remember that he doesn't know his whole family yet, since he arrived in this world less than 1 month ago. And then his cousin starts teasing, saying that actually he is sick, and that is why he only fainted, so he didn't remember anything. Since you forgot about me, I'll introduce myself. My father is your father's 4th oldest brother, and I am your cousin, the nightmare of countless and beautiful girls, the rich and handsome Hong and Yell. The guy was a complete jerk, and just by looking at that madman's face, you can already see that he is worthless. Wow, how disgusting you are. And apparently you're kind of in love with our cousin, right? Be careful, girl, otherwise he'll start stalking you. This makes Aniel all furious. He even starts to catch fire. They kept mentioning something called the annual meeting, so he asks what meeting was that. She explains that this family meeting happens every year, and serves to give a bonus to the family member who reached the best financial rates. Luke starts to find that attractive, and asks how much would the one who finished in first place earn, and she said that he would earn a total of 1 billion. Both he and Julia start to get all astonished, since that would be a very large amount. He would need to make a lot of investments to be able to stay at least in the top 10. That boring guy of his cousin already starts to brag, saying that he will stay in at least top 5 this year. Wow, this guy is very annoying. Get ready because I'm going to end you. Our main character keeps saying that he will try to win this year, but they start laughing, saying that Aniel is impossible. When he was passing, he ends up kicking the dog, and the dog gets angry and ends up biting him on the butt. And we already see that this guy is kind of a faggot, right? He runs away, asking for help, creating an embarrassing situation. Minutes later, those two jerks leave, and Luke keeps saying that he wants to finish in first place, but Julia wasn't very confident about that. So he asks, what do you mean, right? You don't believe in me? She said that the problem's not believing in him or not, but that this would become an impossible mission. That cousin of his, Maria, she had used 20 million of the initial funds to open several hotels and buy several clubs, and she earned a total of 90 million per month. When he hears about his cousin's earnings, he gets a little apprehensive. It really seemed like an impossible task, but he says that they can't stay still at this moment. A car ends up arriving and the dog starts barking. It was the dog pound people, and they were taking that dog to take him away. Julia starts screaming, telling them not to do that, and the guy explains that they can't leave a dog wandering on the street. In the back of the dog pound, there were several other dogs that were also captured. Julia starts to get sad, asking what they would do with the poor dogs. The guy said that they will take them for adoption, and those that are not adopted will have another end. In other words, they will be put to sleep. She had already figured out right away what that meant, and gets a little sad, and says that she can't keep watching those poor puppies suffer a tragic ending. So she turns to Luke, asking him to rescue those puppies. This was a great opportunity for him to make an investment that saves street animals. In a very confident way, he said that he will build a shelter for lost animals and provide a clean and safe home for them. This already leaves Julia all melted by our hero, and she even starts to hug him, saying that she is happy, and that he is a very charitable person. And the poor of our hero gets with that face there of shameless. Sometime later, they go to a place that was selling several plots of land. It was a slightly remote area, but he ended up being able to buy these plots of land for just 10 million. He even said that it seems a little crazy to pay that value in these plots of land, but he believes that it is a great investment. His fiancée hugs him, saying that this was a request from her and that she is happy that he is doing the things she asks. A climate starts to roll between them since she was feeling in love since the guy there was badass. If you want Luke to stay with Julia now, leave a like down there. He said that he only did that thanks to her. At that moment, his secretary warns that a group there contacted to partner with the girl's band. He is interested, since it was an opportunity for him to earn even more money. The scene changes to another hotel, where we see a guy eating a skewer. This people were from a film that was wanting to hire the girls to make the soundtrack. They knew Luke, since the Hong family was well known, and they keep making fun of saying that the boy is a prodigy and only knows how to spend money. At that moment, he ends up arriving, and his secretary apologizes for the delay. The gentleman with glasses already introduces himself, saying that he is the music director, and the one next to him is the film director. They greet each other. Our brother keeps thinking that these guys there seem to be a little charlatans. They end up going up to the office up there to be able to negotiate. They say that this girl's band is getting quite popular, and that they liked their music, and that is why they wanted to add it in the film. They show the script of the film to our hero, and says that they spent 3 years writing the film. The film was called The Hero Wind Hunter. Luke asks how much they thought this film would yield at the box office. The director said that they expect around 1.5 billion. It was a very high value. Luke ends up asking how much they want to pay for the copyright of the songs. They say that they will offer 500,000, but if our hero thinks it is little, they can increase the value of 50,000 more. Luke finds this an insult and ends up throwing the script on the table. The guy is perplexed, and asks if the boy has any idea what he's doing. As Luke came from our world, he knew that the films there were very bad and starts to say that these guys' film will be crap. The director feels offended and starts shouting at our hero, saying that he doesn't understand anything about cinema. They even say that they only contacted because they liked the music, but that our main character doesn't understand anything about business. So Luke starts to say that their film is very childish and that it has special effects that are a drug. It is appearing the films that are released nowadays of 10, 8 you can take and throw in the trash. They start to insult Luke even more, saying that he doesn't understand about work of art, and that way they leave quite upset. His secretary asks if he has any idea of the value there that he will be losing at box office, but Luke said that he doesn't care. He says that in his world the films are much better, and the secretary asks, right? How about our world? No one knew that he came from another universe, people, so he needs a disguise. He decides to make a film on his own and puts on a list the name of the people he would like Sheila to call and talk to them. In a very confident way, he said that he was going to produce his own film and would make that 1 billion. The scene changes to a filming set. We see a not very talented actor trying to do the filming, but he kept stuttering when it was time to cry. He also ends up erring, and his crying is not very convincing. That's why that director starts shouting at him and asks to stop filming. He goes there and says that the boy doesn't know how to act, and still shouts, saying that if he wants to be an actor, he needs to improve a lot. Another actor is called to demonstrate how one should act for real, and they redo that scene with the new actor crying a lot. He had been dumped and acts in a very dramatic way. The director tells the newbie that this is how a man should react when he gets dumped. The boy's cell phone starts to ring, and he reads the message that had arrived for him. Meanwhile, the director continued to humiliate the boy, but it seemed that he had received a great proposal. So he ends up pushing that director, telling him to get out. Then the scene changes again to the house of a screenwriter. She had stopped writing scripts for a few days. That's because her old boss kept complaining, saying that her scripts were practically useless. This led the woman to become very sad. She thought she wasn't good enough to continue in this field. However, she ends up receiving a notification and gives a shout there of joy, since she had received a proposal to write a film. And she even ends up sending an emoji there to her old boss, saying that she's falling out. And finally, we go to a suburban park. We see a very cool girl and even look like you, Hatsune Miku, who's from the old, knows the Vocaloids. If that was part of your childhood, comment there for us. There was a bunch of boys commenting about that girl. She made a kind of gadget, and the guy says that if that rocket of hers flies, he will eat dog poop. Hatsune ends up pressing a button. The rocket that she had made with gadgets starts to fly, and that way the boy lost the bet and would have to eat dog poop. She also receives a notification on her smartwatch, and mounting on her motorcycle, she leaves from there. The scene goes to the hotel where our hero had bought. This was Luan, a young actor, but the characters that he took there to do were not compatible with his personality and appearance. We also have the screenwriter who was called Chong. She was a great writer, but the work she took lately were also not compatible with her writing. And finally, we have Hatsune. She was a girl who lived in the poorest part of the city, and she was very creative. He had selected brilliant minds to be part of his film, and starts to tell them all his plan. Not even those people there believed in his potential. Luan ends up asking, what did our main character see of special? He says that he wants to produce a great film, and believes that all of them have the potential to do a magnificent work. Those people ask, right, how about produce a film? That seemed to be quite sudden, but Luke continued saying that he believes in the potential of each of them, and that if they joined the talent, they would produce a very good film. Jung said that the films that she has been writing in recent years were a failure, and that she even lost her job. But Luke says that they will work without any pressure, giving creative freedom for all of them, and still on top of that, he would divide the profit of the film, and the people already start to get a little more excited. Luke says that Luan must train a lot, develop his muscles, and we'll give the time of 1 month for him to do that only on hand. It is the same for the guy to get pumped up in about 1 month. In real life, it is 5 years training and taking bomb, and still if you don't stay in the perfect shape. While Zhang, our main character, says that he completely trusts in her script, and that the woman has total freedom to write the film that she wants. And as for Hatsune, our main character says that he will also give freedom for her to develop the accessories and also the clothes for the film. And now the plan was marked. He ends up calling Nara to be part of his film, and she would be the protagonist. The girl says that she didn't know how to act, so Luke says that if she doesn't accept, he'll pass the paper to another member of the band. At that time, she changes her mind and said that she will accept to be the protagonist, but that her friends must also participate in the film. In response, Luke said that he already planned that. Julia asks if he only wants to make this film because he was insulted by those filmmakers, and he said that it is more or less that. Julia said that he is petty, and he even admits, saying that maybe he is really, but he believes that this film will be profitable. As he had spent all the money that remained in those lands of the desert, Julia said that they needed to leverage money for the film. In response, Luke said that that wasn't a problem, because he had a very rich family, and that way he goes even to his mother's house. Arriving at his mansion, he was trying to convince his parents to invest in his film. They received a paper telling all the strategy of dissemination and marketing. The father of our main character was not very convinced. Soon after, they start to talk about some lands that are being sold at the end of the city that are costing now about 100 to 100 million. They would invest in our hero's film, and also invest in these lands. However, they realized that all these lands have already been sold, and the buyer was called Luke Hong. It is people, it seems, that finally our main character made a great deal. The scene changes to the filming of the film of that other director. He was quite angry since the female main character wasn't there on the filming set, so he starts complaining, saying that this actress is not good at all, and one of the investors there of the film keeps saying that it is only to start the recording with another actress and then to replace using computer graphics. That is exactly what the director tells to do, and they start the filming. He had planned the filming of this film for 5 years and ended up hiring the best actors. That other, his friend, that always was around, said that he heard some news. They heard that Luke was also preparing a great film, and still on top of that, he would have Nara as the main protagonist. They even comment that probably Luke discovered the value that that girl had, but they keep saying that the film will not be very good, because they hired Luan as an actor, and also Zhang as a screenwriter. They say that Zhang is precisely that woman there, that they made her career go down the drain, because they hired several bots to keep talking bad about her scripts. So I already imagine that obviously our main character's film will not go very well. The scene changes to a little later in a luxury hotel, and there were those 3 villains meeting. The film director along with the former manager of the female band. They were toasting and also celebrating the success of this next film. The president of the company also was there. They comment that making film nowadays is very difficult because the expenses are high. They comment about the actress that they put for the film. Besides being expensive, she was irresponsible and never was there on the filming set. The president of the company said that it would be very good if they had the contract of Nara, because then yes, the film would be good. But her former manager says that he no longer has contact with the girl, because he ended up tearing up the contract he had made before. The guys there, they didn't know about that, and they even comment that they wanted to hire that girl. So, the former manager, he comments that someone ended up discovering something rotten about him and did a blackmail. Now he was at the bottom of the well, and the film director keeps saying that they should at least try to take revenge. They could end with her reputation spreading some lie, and that former manager of the band finds that a great idea. He says that it makes total sense. He will end with her career, just as they ended with his career. The film director, together with the president, keeps celebrating, saying that they will take revenge. The scene changes to the 3-star hotel. where Luke would make the announcement of his film. His new film would be called Operation of Hunting to the Lightning and had several journalists covering this matter. Luan, he had managed to get pumped up. Something that is quite unlikely, right people? And Nara, she also was all splendid. The journalists and paparazzi were quite curious about who is this new actor, and also start photographing Luke together with Julia, saying that the fiancé of our hero was very beautiful. She comments with her fiancé that the film industry was not something very easy, and he said that he knows that very well, and that if it goes wrong it doesn't matter. He counted with the help of Julia, and she said that with certainty she would help, but that she also didn't understand much about it. In other words, in case he failed as a film director, it wouldn't matter, since he was a billionaire. At that moment his secretary ends up arriving. She says that the marketing department of some companies wanted to talk about some important issues. It was about those lands that he had bought, and he says that his secretary will be in charge of doing these negotiations. He said that he trusts her very much, and as he will become busy, he'll put her in the future, as the future director of the company. She gets all happy, starts to jump, saying that she will do a great job and will give her best. At that moment, Hatsune ends up arriving, saying that she prepared what he had asked. It was quite difficult, but she asked if he would like to test that new prototype. Our hero said yes, that they should test immediately, and Julia gets curious, asking, "What equipment is that?" That way they go there to experiment. The girl puts it on the floor and says that everything is prepared and asks if she could activate. He said yes, and at that moment she ends up pressing the button. That was a projector, and starts to project something in the sky. That 3D projection was very realistic, making Julia take a great scare, and she even jumps on top of our hero asking for help. He warns that that is fake and is not more than a hologram. That Hatsune was very talented, and he said that he will use that to produce his films. He even asked the girl how many she managed to make, and she said that she made 3 units, and that way they start to do the filming. The special effects were really impressive, and the film that they were producing had something to do with the alien invasion. Those projectors were really working, and the monsters were very realistic. At that moment, a duo of heroes ends up appearing, and they were the characters Anara and Luan. She uses her fast wind knife. He uses his lightning whip power. However, at that moment, she ends up unbalancing, and the poor girl comments that she was afraid of heights, and our main character asks if everything was okay. She was not very confident, says that she is afraid of spoiling the film, so our main character says for her to calm down and give a pause. He joins with Zhang to talk about some modifications of the script, and Nara goes there a little afflicted. She says that she sings very well, but acting is not her strong point. She's afraid of hindering the whole band. In response, Luke says that he wrote this paper precisely for her, and it would be very important that she had confidence and made a good performance. However, the girl was not feeling very well because she thought that she wasn't good enough. So Zhang gives the idea of recording first the scenes that were calmer, and after they would go to film the action scenes. Luke still says that he trusts her very much, and that she is talented, and that he is sure that she will do very well. This ends up leaving her more confident, and says that she will give her best. Later that same day, the scene goes to the mansion of Wrong. The scene changes to a little later that same day. He was improving his points of statistics, and now he wouldn't need to use his cane anymore. Our main character was even doing some martial arts moves. He comments that he is faster than Usain Bolt, and that he would fight better than Mike Tyson. Of that I doubt. He ends up putting his clothes to attend who was knocking on the door. Who appeared there was his fiancée, and she said that some false news about Nara appeared. They had said that she was going out with rich men to be able to leverage her musical career, but our main character remains calm with these news there. He even keeps making a little joke asking if by chance these news of her are going out with a rich man referred to him. But Julia gets angry saying that that was done to spoil the film that they are recording. Luke knew about all that, and even suspected of who was responsible for doing these false news. He lies on the bed in a very confident way, and says that that is advantageous for them, since it will be doing free publicity about the film. Julia doesn't understand very well how that can be advantageous. So he reveals that if it was to call the police to identify who is spreading this false news, it wouldn't help much. It was enough for them to wait for the right moment and unmask these liars. Meanwhile, on the internet, everyone was getting shocked with this news of Nara. The forums there of K-pop didn't stop reporting about that, and some days later, on the filming set, there was everyone commenting about this subject. The friend of the director comments that the false news that they spread was having effect. People were already starting to boycott the film that Luke was recording, and the director said that that would be good for them. The guy still says that it is for Luke to learn to never disrespect them anymore. They even comment that now the box office of Luke's film will plummet and their film will be even more successful. The director said that the prodigal in the final always is a prodigal and that he barely entered the cinema industry and was already falling out. Meanwhile, people didn't stop commenting these news of Nara on the internet. The scene changes again to the filming set of our main character's film, Nara. She was not managing to do the filming because she didn't stop crying. Luke said for her to stay calm because he was going to solve everything. So he asks if the girl trusts him. She says that it is logical that she trusts, since he saved her career and still on top of that, he was giving this new opportunity to the girl. From now on, she would have to leave her cell phone aside and not stay focusing on these false news and give her best to act in the film. She knew that he was going to seek justice for her, so she ends up leaving, wiping away the tears. Some seconds later, his secretary ends up coming back. She had marked by a request of our hero, a meeting with that former manager of the band, and that way he goes there. The guy was brave and appeared alone in the lion's den, and even ends up making a joke saying that he is familiar with this place. As soon as he enters in that building, he gets shocked, since that bully there put several security guards to pass the stockings of our main character. Luke makes a joke asking if by chance they are preparing for a war. The manager finally appears saying that he'd heard much about Luke. Still comments that this is the first time that they were meeting to make fun of this guy. Our main character says that this is the second time that he is seeing the guy face to face, and the manager already got the reference. So much that his henchmen wanted to assault our main character. However, the manager, he gives a shout saying that it would be very cowardly to hit a disabled person, and that way they sit in another room to negotiate. The guy asks, what brought Luke there? He already goes straight pulling an item inside his suit. It was a pen drive. He says that all the filming is there inside, and that it doesn't have a backup. The guy prepares to grab the pen drive, but our main character takes from his hand. He says for John that he will not manage, unless he makes an agreement. John, that is the name of this manager, he gets surprised, since he was a boxer fighter, and even so our main character had the fastest reflex than his. So John asks what Luke would like to have in exchange. He would like actually to confirm one thing. John asks what thing would that be. He wanted to know if, by chance, the man with whom he had dinner in the restaurant last night had something to do with the rumors of Nara. This shameless says that no, and asks to deliver the pen drive. But this had not convinced our main character, that keeps asking him about who spread those lies. This leaves John furious, and he starts to say for Luke to call the police to investigate about these lies. So Luke affirms that he would like John to help him to investigate about who were these criminals. This leaves the manager furious, and he starts asking if the boy is joking with his face. At that moment, John's henchmen end up entering in the room, and John says that even if Luke was part of a powerful family, he was not afraid of ending with his life. Still says that Luke is only a disabled person, and that it would be easy to deceive the other people, saying that he simply fell from the stairs in a quite calm way. Luke says that it is enough for him to confirm if those guys had to do with this, and if he confirmed, he would deliver the pen drive. However, the old man gets extremely furious and goes towards our hero. Another henchman talks for his boss not to soil his hands with this disabled person, and says that he himself will deal with Luke. However, our main character uses his cane. He says that if the guy gets closer, he'll pierce his neck. John comments that the boy is quite fast, and Luke asks who is it that said that he was a disabled person? The old man starts asking what the hell the boy wanted. I already said that I only want to verify who is behind those rumors. Luke grabs a sheet of paper and puts it on the table and says for the guy to start writing how they plan to defame Nara. However, the old man starts to give laughs. He says that this prodigy boy was very astute and that he even thought that he would manage to convince him to do a thing like that. So Luke asks if he would like for everyone there to know that he had an affair with his sister-in-law. And that way, John already gets furious and goes towards Luke, giving a kick on the table. The boy jumps back, diverting from the attack, and that way everyone realizes that Luke was not a disabled person. Our hero starts to take out, asking if everyone there would believe that he took a magic pill to be able to recover. And John said that he is already without patience with this boy, that will end with him now. He goes trying to give a punch, saying for him to deliver the pen drive soon. However, Luke, he already was well stronger, and ends up diverting again. John jumps saying that he was master of Taekwondo, and this was the perfect chance for Luke to test his new body. He tries to block that Taekwondo hit with his cane, but it ends up being party in half. The other henchmen say that they will help their boss, but he said that he doesn't need help to end with the disabled person. The two legs end up meeting, and people start to comment that the prodigy will not do well, since their boss was master of Taekwondo, and broke even trees with the legs. They even say that the boy is striving a lot not to make a face of crying. Probably he will leave from there with 5 broken bones. Actually, who was making a face of crying was their boss, who was even holding there not to open his mouth. The henchmen go there to see if the boss was well. He talks for the people there to calm down because he had already given up on the fight. He admits that the boy is very strong, that probably practiced martial arts, and when it seemed that he was going to surrender, the guy already pulls a taser to try to electrocute our main character. Only that we know that Luke was badass and ends up stealing the weapon from him there. Luke said that this guy is incorrigible, and that he deserved a very well-given lesson. That way, he starts to use the taser to electrocute the madman, and meanwhile, the henchman can't do anything about it. After taking 15 electric shock, the guy said that he will tell the truth. He had recorded everything, and this was a great evidence for Luke. John still says that if he didn't deliver the video, Luke would electrocute him until the guy loses life. So he ends up delivering the pen drive, containing all the video of that meeting, and the guy already gets all discouraged on the floor, since his life now would go down the drain. Luke talks that that pen drive that he had delivered really contained the video, and that this would be a good exchange. That way, the guy ends up thanking, because Luke said that he wouldn't incriminate only the film director. Everyone talked that the youngest son of the wrong family was only a prodigal that was worth nothing. However, everyone was mistaken, and that way he goes away. His driver asked what happened to Luke's cane, and he said that now he wouldn't need it anymore. The next day, he was there in his company watching the video. Really, John had filmed all that conversation that he had in the meeting, and he shows this filming for Julia and Hatsune. She was there in the background watching everything. Julia talks that it would be very good for them to spread this video in the media, that way cleaning the reputation of Nara. However, Luke talks that he has to act in a wiser way, and that now it is not the right hour to do that. He turns to Hatsune and asks if she would manage to edit this video using the abilities that she has. She talks that she would manage yes to edit the video, but if she put some specialists to analyze the video that she edited, probably they would discover. He guarantees for the girl that no specialist would analyze the video and comments there which additions that he would like for her to do. Days later, that film director was giving an interview for a great public talking about his film. The interviewer comments that the main actress didn't appear, and that for that reason they would interview only the director. He starts to do some motivational speeches, talking for the people never to give up on their dreams. Just as he never gave up on being a great film director, he was very fake. And the popularity of his film, that was about to premiere, was there in the heights. It was the most talked film of the moment. So the interviewer asks if someone from the audience would like to make a question. A girl comments that she admires very much the films of this director, and asks for him some tips, so that she also becomes an actress. This woman there looks and comes for this woman's face. This woman said that she would like to be an actress using only her talents, and didn't do as Nara, that sold herself for a rich guy, only to earn fame. Do you really think that you would manage to use your body to get popularity? My daughter, I even thought that this director would make fun of you. He kept doing some motivational speeches for everyone to clap for him. This guy, he was more fake than a Brazilian politician. On the other hand, the premiere film, Operation Lightning Hunters of our main character, was empty. No one went there to do the press conference. Julia asks if he is confident with this film, since everyone was uninterested and was even boycotting their film. However, Luke, he was confident, and said that he was going to spread that video that defamed Nara at the last hour, and that way reverse all the story. The scene changes to some days after the film had premiered. The premiere had happened the day before, already was box office success, and they were all celebrating. They say that one of the things that helped the film to be so famous that way is that people were boycotting Luke's film, and the director talks that this was a brilliant strategy of theirs. The director of the industry that ended up making this film, he comments that this strategy really was very good, and that he'll profit a lot with this film. That way they make a toast to the cinematographic success. At that moment, someone ends up appearing there bringing urgent news. He shows the notebook with a video that was circulating throughout the internet. When they see the video, they get surprised. As the seconds pass there from the video, they keep getting more surprised still. Hatsune had made an addition in the video, and put only the director together with his assistant, and ended up taking the owner of the company from this video. In the filmings, they combined a way to defame Nara in order to harm Luke's film. To make things worse, in the final scene, the film director gave an evil laugh saying that this will leverage the box office of his film. This was a very hard blow that they had taken, and they were breathless. They even start to get desperate, saying to pay an agency to make several bots, to keep defending them, and even comment with the director of the cinematographic company what that he must do to save the reputation of the director and of his assistant. To make things worse still, they couldn't call the police, since even though the video was edited, they kinda ended up talking these things anyway. The owner of the company tells all of them to shut their mouths. Our main character was so smart that he ended up taking him from the filmings, and that is why the guy keeps talking to leave quiet, since he ended up getting away. The film director comments that his boss also was in that meeting, and he will not get away only because he was taken there from the video. However, the manager keeps commenting for the director to shut his mouth and that if by chance they discover that he was together there in this whole conversation, the press would be drowned. The two realized that they ended up in a hole without exit, and they wouldn't manage to get away in any way. Luke was very smart. He did this so that they didn't have an alternative in case they tried to run behind. Luke disclosed the true video, where the owner of the company also was talking about ending with Nara's career. That way everyone starts to scold them on the internet, saying that now they will watch the film that Nara was the protagonist, and you already know, right? Nothing like to leave angry teenagers on the internet. This people make a lot of noise. So much that the cinema started to get crowded to watch the film that Luke had recorded, and that way the box offices start to go to the heights. It had been 2 days that this had happened, and they had made about $1 billion, and not even Julia was believing in this. Luke, he stays in that pose, all confident, saying never to mess with him and that he always was a step ahead, and even comments that now he will earn a lot of money with this. Nothing is more satisfying than seeing these loose villains doing bad. Julia even hugs him, saying that their film has already hit $9 billion and that it is a success, and is the film with the highest box office of the country. The people that participated in the film start to applaud Luke, and Julia gets embarrassed, saying that she had gotten very excited. However, Luke, he says that this is not merit of him, but yes, merit of everyone that helped him. Still says that he will divide with everyone. Participation's a profit of the box office, and the people start to celebrate. The scene changes for the film director drinking in the bar. The guy was a failure, and everyone there starts to take out from him. However, he said that he wouldn't forget about Luke. His helper talks for his friend to stop with this, and if he tried to seek revenge, he would only end up entering in the hole even deeper. However, the guy keeps saying that he shouldn't be underestimated, and that never in life that he would stay still, being humiliated that way. He was so nervous that even broke the glass, and continues saying that Luke went too far, and that he will take revenge in the worst way possible. He gets up and goes away, and his helper talks that he will stop following this director, because if not, he also will do even worse. He says that he'll find his old master in the mountains, and that for sure he'll help him in this revenge. In this work, his helper realizes that it is not good to stay getting involved with the director, since he is getting kinda crazy. The scene goes back for the mansion of the Hong family. His mother was very happy, saying that her baby, he finally became a very great man, and still had gotten free from that disease. He said that all this was thanks to Julia, and that she has treated him very well in these last days. So his mother goes there and keeps hugging Julia, saying that she is a great daughter-in-law. Our main character even gives a wink for her, and the girl gets embarrassed with her cheeks flushed. Luke's father talks that Julia really was a great help, and that she must give the news to her father that he will help him in what is needed. The girl ends up thanking her in-laws, and that way our hero goes even to the outside with his fiancée. The girl gets a little embarrassed and thanks, however. She said that this was not merit of her, no. Luke talks that after she entered in his life, he ended up with this label of prodigal and started to earn a lot of money. And still on top of that, he improved his humor, and also his health. This leaves Julia even more embarrassed, but thanks for him talking these good things about her. Luke already is attacker, already goes straight on top of her, saying how that she plans to thank him and people. Will we finally have the precious moments of Luke? If you want him to get to the end with Julia, comment there for us. She gets all embarrassed asking, how about that? How do you want me to thank you? Well, you are my fiancé. You must know how I want you to thank me. You knew very well what he was wanting, and she also knew about that. Then that is why Julia ends up pushing him on top of the bench. She talks that they still are fiancés and are not married, and for that reason he must stop thinking about sleeping with her, the big boy. Then he gives a little excuse, saying that he only wanted a hug. He didn't want to sleep with her. Oh, so that was what you wanted? Then I can solve for you. She goes there and starts to hug him, pressing the boy on the bench. She was squeezing so much that he starts to say that he is being suffocated. Minutes later stays a quite romantic climate between them. She said that she didn't expect that he had such a big pectoral. In response, he talks that it is because now that he is getting healthier. However, she was not saying about physical strength, but yes, about the ambitions, and that she always thought that he was a bum. But actually he is very smart, affectionate, and wise. She talks that her family, the Tang family, was living a very strong crisis, and she barely managed to sleep. Because of this crisis, her father kept insisting for her to marry Luke, and only for that she accepted. However, now that she was living with Luke, she always slept calmer and felt safe next to him. He knew that her family was going through a financial crisis, and ends up asking, what is the story behind this? She talks that the Tang family was a quite traditional family, and that they produced remedies for about 800 years. However, 3 years ago, a competitor company called Shen ended up stealing the secret formulas of the medicines. They managed to steal the secret formula of some remedies that were not launched, and launched these remedies first, demanding a compensation in case the Tang company also launched. Luke asked if by chance there wasn't some traitor there in the company, and that ended up leaking these information. She said that they even thought about this, but all the employees had participation of profit in the company, so it was a little unfeasible. Then they suggested the hypothesis of a thief, and Julia already gets all nervous talking that it was exactly that. The security guard tells that certain day he was ransacking the company. However, a quite beautiful woman appeared, and of long hair, and ended up hitting him from the back. After that, all the formulas of the company were stolen, what ended up taking the Tang company to a bankruptcy. Luke asks what he can do to help her, since he had enough money. She talks that from here to a month there will be an auction that will sell an extremely rare treasure, and that several families, even the rival family, there that they suspect that stole the formulas, will be participating of this auction. Luke already gets curious to know what kind of rare treasure is that. She talks that it is a celestial sacred flower, and that it only exists one in the whole world, and that if they manage to get this magic flower, they will manage to make extremely valuable medicines. It is people, only in Chinese work even, to have these magic flowers, these crazy stops. He asks for Julia what that they will do in case they manage to buy this magic flower. But the bandit will go there and steal this flower, she replies. She gets all angry, tightening the hinges, saying that it is enough for that girl to try to steal, that she will be there to give a beating. This was a question of life or death, and all the Tang family depended on creating medicines based on this flower. This was the first time that Luke saw Julia so angry that way. He even starts to find her cute. This was the last chance of her family managing to leverage the company again. The father of our main character agreed to buy this flower, but 50% of the Tang company will belong to the Hong family. Another part of the agreement was that the daughter of the Tang family, Julia, marry Luke. And that was the youngest son there of the Hong family. She even comments that she would cook for him every day and that her cuisine was very good, but that no one had the chance to experiment. He would be the first. He keeps looking for her and finds this very cute. Then he starts to laugh, trying to disguise. The girl already raises all angry, asking why that he was laughing at her face? He said that he finds her very cute. The climate gets a little embarrassing and both get with their cheeks flushed, but she starts to yield, since she also was liking him. Then, when Luke least expected, she goes on top of him and gives a big kiss on his cheek. He gets with his cheeks flushed, dying of shame. Then she ends up saying that she'll pay all the helps that he is giving to her, and he keeps smiling, agreeing. 15 days had passed, and Julia's father finally had met her again. Mr. Hong gives him welcome to Tang and says that it is very good to see him again, and the girl runs to hug her father. He thanks Luke for him taking care there of his daughter, and ends up asking what that Luke did to recover. He talks that it was because his daughter took very well care of the boy. He didn't know that his daughter was so good that way, and she keeps laughing, saying that her fiancé is only talking nonsense. It was about to start the auction, and they were going to enter inside the hall to try to buy that magic flower. Mr. Wrong was one of the richest guys of China, and everyone there starts to comment about this and keep talking that the Wrong family came in wait. They even point for Luke, saying that he was the prodigal son. However, someone questions, saying that of prodigal he has nothing. First, that he bought more than 10 hotels in the Central District, he became CEO of a 3-star hotel, and still on top of that he invented the barbecue. Outside that he was the manager of Nara, the new rock star. Also was a film director, premiering a film of biggest success of all times, Prodigal's Operation Lightning Hunt. He didn't have nothing, and that way the auction was about to start. Julia's father, that was broken, talks for Mr. Hong for him not to worry about money because he had brought 20 million to help to buy the flower. Do you really think that these 20 million will serve for something? Julia comments that she is a little tight, that she would like to go to the bathroom, and her fiancé said that he'll go there with her. He enters in the male bathroom, and she goes even to the female bathroom. When he arrives in the urinal, a guy doesn't respect the safety zone and keeps looking there for our hero. He asks for the madman what that he was looking. The madman comments that he has never seen anything of that size, and comments that from now on he will be fan of our hero. Is it that same that you are thinking? I confess that when I read this here, I started to give a laugh. I didn't expect a joke of these. Our main character, he runs to wash his hand and to leave from there as fast as possible. However, this guy is strange, keeps persecuting him. He keeps making this face son of Chola, and Luke asks what he wants. However, he didn't stop looking with this strange face. And Luke asks, "What was it, my brother? What do you want?" He wanted to know what that Luke did to have that thing there of that size. And if by chance he took some magic pill, he really didn't know why that his document was of that size. Maybe it was because of the prodigal system. Then Luke runs away from there, saying for this guy not to chase him. When he arrives on the outside, that annoying cousin of his was there. Ariel asks if he was with stomachache. However, Luke keeps pretending that he doesn't know his cousin. This leaves him quite angry. "Oh, I remember to you. And how was your butt after you took that bite?" On talking this, everyone that was around starts to laugh, saying that this scene probably was very funny. Ariel comments that he knows very well that Luke appeared in this auction only to buy the celestial flower. So our hero asks how he knows that. The boy comments that he and his family will do everything to buy this magic flower, and he still leaves giving an evil laugh. At that moment, Julia appears and asks why his cousin was laughing in that way, and that strange guy keeps there on the side snooping our main character. He goes even to Julia and comments that she is a lucky woman because our main character had a very big business. He holds on her hand and runs away, saying for her not to give attention for this shameless. Soon after they end up sitting down and Julia asks, what kind of big thing is this that guy was talking? Luke said that she will discover this in the future when they marry. However, she talks that she wants to know now and asks for him to take this big business outside that she wants to see. She really talked this, people. With all these words, the auction was about to start. The first item that they were going to auction was something quite valuable. This was a wine cup of ancient China that was used by the first emperor. The initial bid was of 20 million. Julia's father already doesn't know where to shove his face, because he brought only 20 million. And the cheapest item of all already started with 20 million. Several people start to give some bids, and the value arrives in 28 million quite fast. However, someone raises the finger and offers 100 million. Everyone that was there in the audience turns there to the back to see who that had given this value so high. There was the fourth master of the Hong family. He was the uncle of our main character, younger brother of his father. Luke's father looks there for his brother, and they keep staring at each other. He knew that his father and his uncle didn't get along very well, and probably he had come there to buy that magic flower. Julia's father comments that he is with bad premonition, because the fourth master Hong, he was mortal enemy of the Tang Company. The CEO of the company, Chen, that is that pharmaceutical rival of the Tang family. He was partner of the fourth son of the Hong family. Then Julia's father already starts to get all nervous there, saying that probably they will not manage to buy this magic flower and his company will declare bankruptcy for good. Even Julia was getting worried, saying there for our main character that now probably they are screwed. At that moment, Luke remembers of what his cousin talked for him about buying that magic flower. Then it was them that were behind of weakening the Tang family. As no one had given an offer bigger than those 100 million, the item ended up being sold for that guy. People start to comment that the fourth son of the Hong family really was very powerful and rich. Now it had another item that was going to enter in the auction. The second item was called Sapphire Heart, and it was an item that took about 3 years to be produced. The initial price was of 30 million, but someone ends up shouting the value of 100 million as an offer. Who had made this offer was the father of our main character, and he talks that he will give as a gift for his future daughter-in-law. Julia gets dying of shame, while our main character keeps giving laughs. People realize that the Hong family came in weight, and that there will not have a chance for them to participate in the auction. Ariel comments with his father that he would like that item to give for Maria, his cousin, and his father gets angry, saying that he cannot stay with his own cousin. Not even the host of the auction was believing in this, and he even pinches his own leg to know that if he wasn't dreaming. As no one had offered more than 100 million, and the item ends up being sold. He asks if Julia will already put this gift, that it's not for her to make little case of the gift that he had earned, and she ends up thanking quite shy. The old man talks that he will not leave his brother to keep showing himself, and that he will show that he is much richer than his brother. Luke ends up putting the necklace on the girl and said that she got very beautiful, and the girl gets dying of shame, people. Many that were participating of the auction start to cry, already thinking that they will not manage to buy any item. Luke perceived that his father decided to declare war against his uncle, and that the fight to get the celestial flower will be very intense. On the other hand, the fourth brother Hong was there analyzing everything. He wouldn't yield so easily. Now they were going to depart for another item. The host says that he will bring a new item, and in this case, it was an extremely valuable item. It was a crown that belonged to the ancient queen of the Third Empire for more than 3,800 years. The initial bid was of 38 million, and people already start to give their bids. At that moment, that strange guy ends up touching on our hero's shoulder. Luke gets startled, asking how that this faggot arrived there so fast that way. Without response, this strange guy said for our main character that he only wants to ask one thing and doesn't want to keep bothering. What was it, my brother? If by chance has some problem there with yourself? Our main character asks if he has some deficiency there below, and that he should look for a doctor. However, the madman says that he only would like to know what remedy that Luke had taken. Our hero knew that this guy, he was not going to leave him quiet. Then he decided to invent a little story. He talks that actually he met a cleric Taoist cultivator, and that this cleric had given him a magic pill, and it was that made his business there. below to be so big. However, this Taoist master traveled the world, and the guy there, he keeps asking for our hero to warn him when he find again this Taoist cleric. Luke doesn't believe that this guy fell in the speech that he had invented. Connect on this guy there that he'll be quite important in the story. The third item had already been sold, and now they present the fourth artifact of the auction. That was a magic sword. The host, he even puts a glove to touch on the item. He ends up holding that sword with enough care. This was an extremely powerful sword, and it could cut even the steel. The initial bid was of 3 million. People that were there watching start to give laugh. Luke asks himself if by chance in this world it had ghosts, since there existed a sword that was so powerful that way that could cut even the steel. People were making joke, but he offers a bid of 3,500,000. His cousin Aniel wouldn't want that Luke stayed with that item. Then he would start to fight to give high bids. He offers 3,500,000 and 1,000 more. Luke starts to increase the value, and the guy always went there and offered 1,000 more. Then our hero, he gets up quite angry, talking for this guy to stop messing with his face. Meanwhile, Julia keeps saying for her fiancé to calm down. Luke enters in the fight and starts to offer 30 million, and his cousin offers 30 million and 100,000. Luke gets even more furious and already offers soon 100 million, and his cousin offers 100 million and 100,000. The guy even talks that this sword is worth nothing and that he will not do any bid after this. Will leave Luke stay with the sword paying expensive. However, our main character was very smart and already calms down, saying that he will not want this item and still starts to take out, saying for his cousin that he could stay with that sword, paying 100 million and 100,000. That way everyone starts to laugh from Ariel saying that he is very idiot for paying so expensive in a sword that is worth nothing. The sucker stays with that face there of crying. I talk for you, nothing so satisfying as to see these bullies doing bad. People didn't stop to render him and he starts to get without grace. His father talks that he is ashamed for the family, and meanwhile he stays there trying to give a little excuse. The owner of the company, Shen, said that he will pay this sword for the son of Mr. Hong, that because they had made an agreement that in case the fourth son there of the Hong family bought that flower, they would divide the profits of the company. However, the guy got a little worried, afraid of, in the end of the accounts, not managing to buy that magic flower. Julia's father says there for our hero that he knows a great blacksmith that made magnificent swords, but Luke said that he was only wanting to take a wave with his cousin. That strange guy talks for Luke that if by chance he doesn't manage to give a bid, he could help our hero. Luke says that he doesn't want the help of this guy. However, the madman said that he only wanted an information about this Taoist cleric. Do you think that I need your help? I am a filmmaker and a famous businessman. I don't need your help. Go there outside, boy. The host of the auction explains that now the most valuable item of this auction will enter. The two masters of the Hong family already get prepared and everyone was extremely attentive to this situation. The host says that finally arrived the hour of showing a sacred herb. However, it wasn't a herb any. It was a plant that only existed one in the whole universe. This flower could cure diseases and even make an old man to transform into a young again. The rich oldies that were hearing that already get all excited. They start to give bids even before seeing the item and start to offer about 50 to 80 million to Julia. She didn't know that the celestial flower was so powerful that way. Luke mentions that when it involved health and longevity, people were willing to give all their money. Julia's father, Mr. Tang, talks that this flower really is very powerful, but as they were going to get her and dissolve in several remedies, the effects were going to get a little weaker. On the other hand, the company Chen only wanted to get this flower to make ultra-powerful remedies and to use this as a bargain with other politicians and earn more power. The host orders to bring an item and it arrives covered by a sheet. As it was withdrawn from a frozen mountain, the flower needed to remain inside the ice. Soon after, he ends up pulling the sheet and says that the item is called the iceberg fairy, the divine herb. They had taken that plant from the mountain, brought in an ice sculpture, and really transmitted a divine aura. The people that were there comment that only to stay near that flower they already felt their youth being restored. Everyone starts to give their bids without even the host to talk the initial bid. Then he says that actually they didn't put an initial bid. After studying a lot, it wouldn't be fair for them to talk a value of such a valuable item. Then the initial bid was of 0 AS. When he talks that the bid was of 0 ANS, people already start to stay in silence, and he repeats, saying that it is that same. For it being a special herb, the initial value is of 0. Soon after, he gives start to the auction. Because of this, people stay in silence, and no one was daring to give a bid even. Julia asks why everyone stayed quiet, and Luke explains that now that the bid is 0, people are afraid of giving a value very high or very low. He talks that if someone doesn't risk and give an initial bid, This silence will remain for many hours. That is why he starts giving a value of 10 million. Soon after, people start to shout, giving bids increasingly high, and Julia perceives that of 100 to 200 million, the bid ended up lowering there for 21 million. That guy keeps saying there for his sister-in-law, between commas, that her fiancé is a very important guy. Julia keeps laughing, saying that Luke's friend is very funny. The values start to get higher and already were bordering in the house of the 30 million. To give a little more of emotion, Luke already offers 200 million. The host already gets excited, because this was a bid very high, and people that were participating of the auction talk that it is very unfair to participate of an auction where the Hong family was. Julia asks if by chance her fiancé will spend all this money only because of her. Then he starts to look for all the sides, and she asks what he was looking, and he says that he's looking if he has another fiancé. The girl gets all angry and starts to squeeze his cheeks, saying for him not to, why do you make joke about this? Julia's father observes there his daughter with a quite romantic climate with Luke, and talks that even if they don't manage to buy this magic plant, already would be good that his daughter entered in a marriage with a family that really seemed to like her. Then, in case everything goes wrong, he still would be happy of his daughter marrying someone that truly loved her. At that moment, someone raises their hands and offers 500 million. It was the fourth son of the Hong family, and the father of our main character offers 700 million. The fourth son offers 1 billion, and the values start to escalate for a level that never before was seen. The older brother offers 1.5 billion, and the fourth brother offers 2 billion. Luke's father then passes to offer 3 billion. The fourth son offers 5 billion. The value goes up so much that arrives to 10 billion, and the host even drops the little hammer. Never in an auction in this country, the values there of bids arrive to a level so stratospheric. He starts to tremble, thinking that he's hearing wrong, and asks if they really offered 10 billion. Then the father of our hero offers 13 billion. Then the fourth brother offers 15 billion. The host already was almost choking. He didn't believe that this really was happening. The gentleman of the company, Tang, even comments that this is going out of control, and people that were watching even comment that this seems to be a lie. On the other hand, Julia's father keeps saying that these bids are very exaggerated and that they should stop there. Not even Luke and Julia were believing that these bids were real. Our hero even comments that this didn't seem to be a simple auction. It was more for two ferocious beasts fighting for territories. He imagines that his father is doing this only to irritate his uncle. Then Julia's father keeps shaking the arm there of the gentleman and saying for him to stop, because it wouldn't be advantageous to pay so expensive that plant. He talks that even if the remedies were profitable, they wouldn't have enough profit to pay the value of this plant. Then Mr. Hong, he stops giving the bids. The CEO of the company, Shen, he comments there that now they will win and got the item. However, the fourth son talks that this will not be profitable for him and would like to change the percentage of profit. He said that he would like 90% of the profits of the pharmaceutical company, Shen. But the owner there of the company, he gets angry, saying that this was not the agreement. On the other hand, the guy said that if he doesn't accept these 90%, he'll give up and buy that flower and offer for another pharmaceutical company. The CEO gets extremely furious and threatens to scold the old man. That bid of 15 billion was very high and no other person had offered more. Luke's father was ready to offer 16 billion, but the other guy there keeps saying for him not to do this. Then our hero starts to get sad, because that they would lose this magic flower. Julia even holds on her fiancé's hand and says that it is all good, and that she has already accepted the end of the Tang family. The host starts to do a countdown to see if no one else was going to offer a higher value. It was practically impossible for someone to offer more than 15 billion of ones. Then someone ends up offering an amount of 10 billion of dollars. People already get scared and look to the back to see who had offered this value so exorbitant. When they look, no one was believing Mr. Wrong. He even rubs his eyes to see if this was true, and the host almost faints. Who had offered 10 billion of dollars was precisely that madman that was chasing our hero. The dollar was worth much more than the yuan. That is why people were so astonished. Luke gets dying of shame, because this guy there of his side, he was ultra-billionaire, and even comments that this guy also must be a prodigal, just as him. The host asks if someone will offer more than 10 billion of dollars. Ariel questions his father if he will not give more bids, but the old man says that this value is very high even for him. The CEO of the company, Shen, says that now he doesn't owe nothing more for this old man and ends up getting it up and goes away. Ariel says for his father that these people there of the Shen family, they were very dangerous and that they would try to take revenge, but there was nothing to be done, and the guy ends up hitting the hammer. That way, that mysterious guy bought the magic flower of the outside. Mr. Hong ends up asking apologies for Julia's father, saying that he wasn't capable of buying that flower. Mr. Tang talks that even that the agreement he didn't give right, He hopes that his daughter still marries Luke. Luke gets angry, saying that with all certainty he'll marry Julia and that he wouldn't only marry her because of a commercial agreement. This leaves the girl embarrassed because she perceived that Luke really liked her. Our hero's father comments that after his son met Julia, he got even healthier and still started to do profitable investments. Mr. Hong still said that his son must marry Julia immediately, leaving Luke dying of shame. At that moment, that strange guy ends up appearing, calling Luke of Big Brother. The boy asks for this guy if he is not afraid of being robbed, since he was carrying a suitcase very big. He said that a boxing champion is not afraid of being robbed and ends up throwing that box on top of Luke. This black suitcase was extremely heavy, and Luke almost falls on the floor. This leaves even him a little admired, because that guy was managing to hold this box only with one hand, without demonstrating much effort. Luke tries to return this box, but the guy said that no, and that this would be a gift for him. He reveals that there inside was the celestial flower, and it would be a gift for Luke. Everyone there gets scared, asking if this was true. The scare was so big that he let the box fall on the floor. However, it had a condition. Luke would have to get in contact with him and warn about when he finds this Taoist master. Before leaving, he talks that this was to be considered as a wedding gift for Luke and his sister-in-law, Julia. Our main character ends up also leaving his contact with him and throws the card, saying that his name is Luke Hong. The guy grabs the card and says that his name is Jackson Michael. What that the man is not capable of to increase there is power, right people? Luke didn't believe that he managed to get about $10 billion without doing much effort, and he warns his father-in-law that he will deliver this magic flower to him. Although things didn't have happened as expected, even so, everything ended up giving right. Julia's father already runs there to grab that box, saying that now the Tang family would be saved. Julia runs and hugs our hero, thanking for everything. She says that he has a good heart and keeps thanking a lot. However, our hero says that these credits don't belong only to him, but his father said that this credit belongs to him, yes, since he earned this flower and solved to give for his father-in-law. His father talks that the Jackson family was one of the richest families of the whole world, and even asks why that guy solved from this magic flower for his son Luke. Julia keeps saying that it is because he discovered that Luke had something very big, and her father keeps asking what kind of big thing was this. Julia said that she also would like to see this big thing, but Luke puts his hand on her mouth for her not to talk anything more, and said that he had a good heart. It was this that the guy was wanting to say. Now is that they had managed that magic flower. They needed to prepare to protect her at all cost, and even warns that if the Tang family needs to reinforce the security, he himself could suggest a team of specialized security. Mr. Tang warns that it was not a simple bandit, and it was more for a ghost. This leaves Luke a little confused, since he didn't believe in ghosts, and he even imagines that the bandit had a very advanced technology. We see there in the background the CEO of the company, Chen, and he was watching everything at the distance and even comments for them not to celebrate so early that way and that they should wait, because he would take revenge. The next day, the story goes even to the headquarters of the company Tang. Julia's father explains that the workers already were guarding the magic flower and would keep that an absolute secret. He still said that he thanks our hero for this big thing that Jackson had talked, because thanks to this all the plans gave right. Luke said to have heard that the person that invaded the building to steal the secret formula had a very special technology, and that they knew a girl that could deal with this. That way they order Hatsune to enter. She had arrived there to develop some technology to impede the bandit from entering in the place. Julia warns her father that this girl is a genius of technology, and that she would help in the security. Hatsune explains that this supposed ghost actually was someone that had a device of invisibility. Luke asks if she managed to arrange some solution, and she said that she manages to create an anti-invisibility device. Luke thinks that even that a person becomes invisible, she still transmitted smell. He keeps thinking in how he can use his power to detect an intruder. Because of this, he asks for his fiancée if he can live there in her house, and she said that yes, that he could stay in any room that he wanted. Like a good and old shameless, he offers himself to sleep in the room together with her, and she said that no, this could not be done. He offers himself to sleep together with her in the same room, but the girl refuses. Hatsune explains that she made a new toy, and asks if he would like to experiment. It was a highly technological watch, and he keeps asking for Hatsune what the hell this watch does. The girl said that that was not more than a simplified version of the arrow projector. He continues asking what that does, but the girl said for him to experiment. She explains that he should scan Julia. He points the watch for her and starts to do the scanner, and she stays a little suspecting of this. Soon after, the watch warns that the scanner was completed. Julia asks if that will project a 3D image of her, and Hatsune said that it is more or less that. Now he should press the button below, and he ends up doing this a little anxious for what would happen. The watch starts to emit a light quite strong and his body starts to be transformed. He was being transformed in Julia, and slowly all his body goes taking a new form, and inside of a few instants he had transformed in Julia. The girl was in shock, without believing that that was possible. There was Luke with his new appearance. He didn't believe that this was real. I bet that if it was you in the place of Luke, you would experiment some little things. He gives a shout, astonished, saying that he transformed in Julia. Hatsune explains that not only the appearance, but also the voice are changed completely. That way, all the intrusive thoughts of our hero are activated and he starts to do that you also would do. However, this leaves Julia extremely furious and she ends up hitting there on her fiancé. The shameless of Luke keeps saying that this is very good, and you already imagine more or less what he is thinking, right? That way he already leaves to try to open the zipper of the skirt, and Julia hits a punch on his face. He says in high and good sound that this is the best invention already created by the human beings. The scene changes for some children walking on the street. They were happy following their teacher, however. In the same street, a runaway truck was coming. The driver tried to press the brakes, but it wasn't working. The truck hit the children right away, and everyone starts to shout desperate. The driver tries to divert, but the street was a little narrow, and he starts to hit in all the cars that were in front of him when the car was about to hit those children. Someone ends up appearing, and only with one punch ends up blocking the truck. It was a super heroine that was there to save all those little children. Because of the hit, the driver ends up jumping at the windshield, but the heroine manages to hold him, and that way she saves the life of everyone. The teacher together with the students gets scared, and the woman that saved everyone had a quite serious look. The people around comment that that was a heroine. In a way a little rude, she ends up throwing the driver on the floor and goes away jumping by the buildings. While the children celebrated the scene, it changes for the pharmaceutical company Chen, and that super heroine ends up arriving there. We know that she is not a super heroine, but yes, a thief. She goes up the sleeve of her clothes and starts to move her arm, and that seemed to be a robotic prosthesis. After unhooking, she ends up withdrawing her mechanical arm. The owner of the company, Chen, ends up appearing behind her. He warns that the auction was not very good, and that they didn't manage to stay with that magic flower. For that reason, he would like that she went even to the Tang Company and destroyed that plant. She asks why she should destroy, and if it wouldn't be more advantageous to steal, as she did the last time. The old man said that if by chance he stole this unique flower, it would stay very in the face. This also would raise suspicion of that they had already stolen the other secret formulas. That is why the most advantageous way for them would be that she destroyed that flower, and that way no one would take advantage of her. The woman asks why that he lost the auction, since he had made partnership with the wrong family. The old man explains that the oldest son of the wrong family also was there, and that because of this, they didn't manage to do the purchase of that flower. The woman explains that as soon as she fixes her arm, she'll invade there the headquarters of the company Tang, and destroy that herb. The scene changes for the house of the fourth oldest son of the Hong family, Enel's mother. She was quite religious and keeps saying for him to throw that sword away, since that sword was demonic. Still gets angry, saying that he is nothing more than a spoiled boy, and that he only bought this sword to try to provoke his younger cousin. Still says that he was ashamed for the family, and that his prodigal cousin, Luke, was doing better than him. Aniel starts to give tantrum, saying that his mother should support him instead of keeping attacking him. That way, the boy leaves of his house, saying that he will take revenge of Luke. He talks that all this was because of this boy there, that kept provoking him, and ends up grabbing the cell phone to call for some people. He ends up calling for a gang of mafiosos, and asks that these guys give away and Luke, and that transform him in a disabled person for real. The scene changes for a taekwondo dojo in the mountains, and we see a master training several students. They prepare to receive a hit from the master, and the old man prepares to give the attack. His eyes start even to shine, and when he hits the attack, his students fly far away. This old man seemed to be very powerful, and even asked for his students if they had learned this technique. Someone appears there clapping, and it was that film director that had said that he would look for his master on the mountain to ask revenge. He already goes straight, saying about why that he came there. That this master didn't want to help much his old student in this revenge, but it seemed that he was owing a favor. And then the director keeps asking when this revenge will be done. The master keeps giving excuses, saying that he is with health problems. The scene changes for a little later that same night. Our hero is controlling an owl, and he was flying over the building of the Tang family. He was doing this to see if he found that thief. As the owls had great vision, he imagined that he could find that woman that had the device to become invisible. Nothing had happened in these last days. He keeps asking himself when that the criminals will act. The security team is in reinforcement, wandering all the building, and he keeps asking himself why that he is striving so much to help Julia, and even comments that he fell in her charms. He grabs a glass of water and gets surprised, since Julia was knocking there on the door. He asks what happened for the heavens to deliver a fairy in his life, and she keeps laughing, saying that she prepared a delicious food for him. This leaves the big boy a little embarrassed and says that he is curious to experiment on her cuisine. The girl said that she prepared with much affection, and when she opens the lid, it didn't seem anything appetizing. Those dumplings were burned and emitted an unpleasant smell. She talks that she gave her best, and that she is anxious to see him experimenting the dumplings. He didn't want to hurt the girl, then he keeps saying that he'll eat everything. With tear in the eyes, she asks if he didn't like, since he was making a face a little of discouraged, but not to see his fiancée crying. He already goes straight, grabbing the dumplings and putting in the mouth. That was horrible, but he said that it was delicious. However, Julia said that that was a joke, and that it was not for him to eat, and delivers a candy to disguise the taste of bitter. He talks that only a candy wouldn't be enough, and the girl keeps saying that it was a prank, and that he ate very fast. Then Luke said that he will take a revenge, and ends up pulling the girl by the arm. With this we arrive in the finale, and he managed to give a big kiss in his fiancée. However, the taste of burned of the dumpling ended up passing for her mouth, and she ends up fainting, and soon after she starts to shout, with him saying that he did this on purpose. Later of dawn, the security guards still were wandering around the house. Later of dawn, the security guards still were walking around the mansion. They already were getting tired of staying walking to there and to here. One of the employees says that he is with stomachache, and the chief of security leaves him to go even there inside to use the bathroom. While he walks, he keeps saying that no one will enter there to steal anything, and starts to send messages for his girlfriend by his cell phone. When he says in the message that he is working as a security guard, but that this service there seems to be kind of idiot at this moment, someone ends up appearing there and ends up hitting a punch in his face. He falls fainted on the floor, and we see that it is one of the assassins that was sent by Ariel, and the guy gives an evil smile, saying that it was very easy to infiltrate in the building. The other security guards comment that the colleague is taking too long in the bathroom and even keep taking out, saying that he is stuck in the toilet. They comment that no one will invade the building, then they could hide in an area there to try to rest. That is exactly what they do. They end up hiding behind a bush. They comment that this story of Invisible Bandit is a lie. However, at that moment, 3 criminals end up appearing behind them and put a black bag in the face of the security guards in order to feint them, and by end, ends up pulling them for inside the bushes. Soon after, the criminals leave of there inside using the clothes of the security guards. We see that those Taekwondo masters, and until now it was 3 different groups that were invading the building in order to take revenge of Luke and also of the Tang Company. However, these infiltrated end up meeting with the true security guards. However, they manage to disguise, and no one perceives. On the top of a building, someone ends up appearing, and it was that bandit. The thief also had arrived there to destroy the magic flower. The owner of the company, Shen, he warns her that she must destroy the plant and not to steal her. In response, she said that she already understood, and starts to activate her technology of invisibility. She still talks that common people don't manage to detect this technology. Already in the invisible mode, she ends up jumping from the top of the roof. She was in front of the security guards, however they don't manage to see her. With this, she managed to pass without them seeing her, and even comments that it will be very easy to arrive even to the local where the magic flower is. The assassin sent by Master Ariel, he had grabbed the clothes of that security guard and was infiltrated. He hides the sword by behind the shield and even starts to give laugh, saying that this was very easy, and still says that he will split Luke to the half so that he doesn't mess nevermore with Master Ariel. At that moment, he ends up meeting with that other group of infiltrated. They keep staring at each other for a brief instant, and both were afraid of being discovered. Then they only stay looking one for the other's face. One of the Taekwondo students asks for the master if they should erase this guy, and the climate gets a little tense between them. However, no one says anything, only continues walking, as if nothing of strange was happening. They suspect one of the other and continue staring at each other, however. Another group of patrol asks why that they were stopped in the middle of that corridor, and that way they start to walk to try to disguise. The group of the Taekwondo fighters even give a sigh, saying that they almost were discovered. At that moment, that invisible thief starts to walk by all the corridors looking for the magic flower. She meets with that group of security guards. At that moment, she perceives a bat flying on top of her head. The bats, they had a kind of sonar, and it was our hero that was using them to be able to identify the invisible woman. The girl, she had already touched in this. She uses a kind of purple aura to try to move the bat away, and our main character perceived that really it had an intruder there. He gives a laugh because finally he managed to find this woman and talks that now it is our to take revenge of her. Luke Hong, he asks Hatsun if the anti-invisibility system was ready, because the visitor had already arrived, and the girl keeps asking herself, right, what do you mean? He already knows this. Our hero, he smiles maliciously and replies that he wouldn't be her boss if he didn't notice these things. Hatsune informs that she needs 10 more minutes, but she is worried about the possibility of enemies reaching the laboratory before that. Lukong, he grabs the cup and says, "Leave it to me, I'll go there and distract them," and she just hopes the enemy isn't too strong. He then looks at the bed and sees that Julia was sleeping like a little angel, and meanwhile she keeps mumbling, showing that she had a very heavy sleep. Our protagonist, he gives a smile and says that now it's time to act. Outside the Tanghan mansion had a hall that was shining at night, and that was where the mess was about to begin. The guards with shields formed a barrier, and the team advanced through the mansion's corridors. The mustached guard, who is the leader of the group, he suggests to his team to eliminate the boy as quickly as possible. He orders the 2 men at the rear to count to 3 so they could all attack together and take down the target with a single blow. As soon as the count reaches 1, the guards launch the attack with batons, but the member of Team 4 was already prepared. The guy realizes he had been discovered when a cylindrical object falls to the ground, and he thinks, "Damn, I ended up exposed," but he wasn't going to let them come out on top. The leader, he even tries to block the blow with his weapon, but the man from the other team, he moves with agility, easily dodges, and knocks out the 2 attackers, who fall groaning in pain. The action in that corridor was very intense, while the other guards were being taken down one by one. Standing over the 2 unconscious men, the other guy there, he was a little surprised. Seeing his plan fail, the mustache man, he begins to get furious, irritated. He throws the metal plate against the man and the target blocks it with his shield, showing him that he also had quick reflexes. Both were intruders, but they didn't know it. Then the guy advances to try to attack this leader, who defends himself with the shield and a violent impact. The man, he was as strong as the mustache guard, and he feels a vibration in his arm. Then the man from the other team, he retreats a little. Maybe he was a little too affected by that blow. They stare at each other, not knowing that both were infiltrators. The member from the other team, he keeps his hand on his arm since he was feeling a bit of pain. That injury was throbbing, showing that the leader's attack was significant, and the guy, he walks in combat stance and reflects that he didn't expect such an easy opponent, that it would be difficult to defeat him. It's because the guy hadn't yet encountered Lukong, otherwise he would have taken an even bigger beating. Suddenly, Lukong appears at a door in the back, catching them both by surprise. The leader shouts Luke's name loudly, pointing at the target. And the man from Team 4, this security team, he panics and thinks about fleeing immediately. He spits out a small sphere he was holding in his mouth, and a smoke bomb ends up exploding, and he takes this chance to escape. These guys only came to cause trouble anyway, because when it comes to fighting, these guys are useless. The leader, he gets confused, not understanding the escape, and even wonders if he should call for reinforcements. The smoke ends up dissipating, and he realizes he needs to chase Lukong quickly, or else his mission will fail. Looking at his fallen colleagues, he keeps telling them to hold on. The scene changes and we see that half-android woman arriving at the place. That thief was using that invisibility power, and she was walking with firm steps, all confident, thinking she wouldn't be discovered. Suddenly she stopped, and up ahead she saw a guy sitting on the ground with his head in his hands, clearly discouraged. She grew curious, wondering if that guy by chance was some guard, but she didn't care much since she thought he wouldn't be able to see her. Without raising his head, Luke released a phrase asking the young lady to stop where she was. The thief froze, turning around instantly, all startled. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Luke, with a slight smile and still covering his face with his hand, asked if by chance she thought he was just resting. The woman, she was paralyzed. How could he see me since he didn't even have his eyes open? Our protagonist kept that sly smile and still threw another one. Who said I need to use my eyes to see you? And he even explained that she was probably using light refraction to stay invisible. However, he had ultrasonic sensors, which was that little bat. The thief, she pulled out that energy weapon with intense glow and said she didn't care about his theory. Since our protagonist detected this woman, she decides that she needs to eliminate him right now. We see a little bat emitting sound waves, and it was in this way that he was managing to, quote, see her. The girl charged forward with weapon in hand, catching Lukong totally by surprise. However, he had great reflexes and ended up rolling on the ground, dodging the attack. The thief, she was shocked by that dodge. What do you mean? Invisible, and even so, Luke managed to dodge. He stood up slowly and even struck a pose covering half his face, introducing himself as Lukong, all full of himself, not humble at all. She recognized him right away and exclaimed that he was very strong and even said he was famous. Her gaze grew serious, taken by anger, and Luke, all cocky, commented that he seemed to be famous and even joked if she wanted an autograph, mocking her. The woman, she ignored that little joke and said that it didn't matter who he was, she would eliminate him. Anyway, she tried to advance, and meanwhile that little bat kept firm and strong, sending sonar waves. Luke makes a grimace and grumbles, asking why she had to be so rough like that. The thief, she managed to make a grazing cut with that energy blade on our hero's shoulder, and without giving time to react, she even landed a kick right in the middle of his chest. The impact on our protagonist was very strong. He just kept rolling on the ground. He fell to his knees all battered, and to make it worse his little bat flew away and he ended up losing the connection. And he even complained, saying that now he's blind since he couldn't see her anymore. The thief approached him, and with that weapon in hand she made a friendly face. The energy blade was shining brightly, ready to finish off our hero. Sweating cold and seeing nothing, Luke, he began to despair and thought he wasn't going to get out of this alive. With eyes full of rage, the thief shouted for him to go to hell. She raised the weapon, determined to end it all right there. And while Luke was vulnerable and unresponsive, that was when the mustache guard appeared. He saw Luke wounded on the ground and thought this was the perfect chance to attack. Shouting, he prepared a blow with his palm full of energy aimed at our protagonist. However, suddenly the thief, who was invisible, stepped in front to also attack our hero. However, she was hit by something. The mustache guard in his charge ended up hitting her by accident. They clashed badly and the guy kinda saved our hero. She let out a cry of surprise and he was confused, thinking he had bumped into something invisible. The impact was so strong that they both went flying, each to one side. The woman, she became half visible for an instant. It was as if her suit was failing, and our protagonist was left wondering what the hell had just happened. The leader of the guards, he appeared and saw Luke and the other guard fallen and injured, and soon thought, right, I don't care what happened. This is my chance. He grabbed his baton back and with eyes shining with determination, he advanced to cut our protag's leg. Seriously, today is not a good day for Luke Hong. The guard, he shot forward like a rocket toward Luke, who was still down. At the last second, the attack was interrupted by a strike from that thief right in his face, and she didn't stop there. A kick in the chest threw the guard far away, knocking the guy out in the process. Luke, he stood still, not understanding anything. He was more lost than a blind man in a shootout. He looked around and saw two guards thrown on the ground, dying in pain. And the guy wasn't understanding what was going on. Confused, he asked himself why the hell those two guards showed up at that exact time. Fallen, the mustache guard, he began mumbling, thinking he had bumped into something. Still on the ground, he covered his mouth and complained that the kick destroyed his teeth, and even said it would cost him a fortune at the dentist. The thief, now partially visible, she grew suspicious. Where did these guys come from? Were they there to protect Luke, maybe? Meanwhile, the scene cut to Hatsun running through the corridors in a hurry. She was panting, holding what seemed to be a new anti-invisibility device. She reached an outside area by the pool's edge and began preparing the equipment. She pressed a button and a blue light beam began shooting out, scanning the place. A beam swept through the corridors looking for anything hidden, and it didn't take long. The scan ended up finding that thief in the corridor. But what is this, she thought. Surprised that she was visible now, she was caught off guard by the technology and appeared completely. Goodbye. Invisibility. Now fully visible, she faced Luke while the two guards were still knocked out. Yeah girl, looks like the game has changed, hasn't it? The mustache guard, he widened his eyes and shouted that someone appeared out of nowhere. Looks like now he finally understood who he had bumped into. Luke Hong, he celebrated and said that Hatsune finished the job and now he could see her. He immediately called the woman nosy and thought she was an android and wanted to buy her. Buy my ass. The woman kept grumbling, not thrilled with that idea. Since she had been discovered, she was going to settle everything with fists. With rolling eyes, she declared she would have to kill Luke. However, before that, she turned to that mustache guard who was still staggering and decided she would finish him first. The guy didn't understand anything and even tried to flee, but she was much faster and gave a kick that sent him flying. Luke shouted to the other guard who was on the ground, telling him to stop that woman. Out of patience, Luke pulled the mustache guy up, telling him to stop stalling and help. Luke Hong, he wasted no time and pushed the guard toward that woman like a human shield. That's right, man. That's what you gotta do. The woman didn't care and attacked the guard with the blade, shouting that he could also go to hell, and the guy tried to escape, cursing everyone. The guard, with his mouth still sore, he asked if Luke was talking to him, and our protagonist replied, already annoyed, saying that it was obvious. After all, he had paid a fortune for those guards to be there. So they had to fight. The guard realized he was stalling and that girl thief was way too sinister and he would be killed if he didn't react. From there, total chaos began. The thief fought both guards at the same time, with punches flying and dust everywhere. And meanwhile, Luke was in the stands shouting encouragement. The guard in the middle of the mess, he asked himself how things got to this point. And Luke, he kept cheering, offering 50 million to whoever captured that woman. Motivation was not lacking. The thief easily pushed one of the guards away, throwing him far. The leader of the guards, with his face already bruised, he thought he should be capturing Luke, not fighting this insane android. He didn't even have time to finish the thought, and the thief had already landed an uppercut on his chin. The impact was absurd, launching the man straight against a window that shattered into pieces. Right after she grabbed that guard who was the disguised assassin by the neck. He could only scream while being lifted from the ground with ease. In desperation, the guy grabbed a dagger that was hidden and tried to stab her arm. The blade then hit that metallic armor, sparking, but causing no damage. She just shot him a look of contempt. To finish, she showed her strength and threw him with everything against the wall. And the wall even cracked with that hit. Luke Hong, he keeps making a face thinking, damn, good thing it's not me getting that beating. Outside the broken window, the mustache man stood up, staring at the thief from inside. He thought furiously, right? That woman is ruining everything. She's blocking my way. The guard grumbles that the plan failed several times and now he needed to fight seriously. Electric energy crackled strongly in the palm of his hand and he was ready to attack. With full power he fired the thunder palm, a bolt of pure energy. The thief was hit head-on by that surprise attack and she suffered with the impact of the explosion. The blow was strong, breaking her armor's arm and the assassin's dagger fell to the ground. Furious at the damage, she turned to the guard, calling the guy an idiot without mercy. A compartment opened in her broken forearm, revealing a small missile. And the mustache man widened his eyes thinking, what the hell have I done with my life? The missile exploded into a giant firebomb, sending the guard flying through the air. From afar, Luke was watching it all and even thought it was amazing. The racket drew everyone's attention and everybody was already aware of the invasion. Luke cheered a lot because of the dense smoke that filled the corridor. When the dust settled, the corridor was empty. Only Luke Hong was still there in the back. Our hero looks back, scratching his neck. Right? Where is everyone? Where did they go? He keeps not understanding anything, looking lost around. On the ground among the smoke, the broken bionic arm of that thief was there sparking. Meanwhile, Julia and Hatsune arrive at the place running, and Julia calls out to our hero, very distressed. Seeing Luke, Julia, she asks if he was okay and notices his shoulder was injured. Our hero, he holds that arm and says that he's fine and asks Hatsune to check that piece. He comments that they lost the fight and that it was a really good one. 2 guards versus 1 android. Hatsune warns after finding a real guard knocked out and even suspects imposters. Luke Hong processes this information and says it makes sense since they were a bit strange. The scene changes. Master Lei crawls panting and asks why everything went wrong. Suddenly Director Jing appears and calls out to him, Master Lei. Jing, he asks what happened and questions if he finished Luke off. However, Master Lei keeps sighing. That old man there says he can't do it anymore and suggests the director find someone else to do it. The director, he gets all angry and grabs the master, complaining about the benefits and calls him ungrateful. Without thinking, the director slaps Master Lei in the face and said that was an insult. Then Master Lei, he stands up and kicks the director, telling him to disappear from there as fast as possible. Recovering, the master shouts near the director and says he lost 2 men and almost died. And all this because of that idiot. And to finish with humiliation, he says that the movies of this director are as bad as his personality. Jing, he is shocked with his hand on his face, wondering if his movies are really that bad. The scene cuts and a man in a suit talks on the phone with one hand and a gun and apologizes. He informs Master Hong that it was annual and that the assassin sent had failed. And the guy on the other end of the line confirms. Right after, the phone is thrown to the ground and the screen breaks with force. Annual was sitting with wine and he was furious, threatening to kill the henchmen's families since they hadn't managed to complete the mission. Back in the room, Julia takes care of Luke's back, which was a bit injured. She stays there applying some medicine. She takes a vial of some special product and prepares to continue the treatment. While Luke waits, Julia keeps shaking the vials. She applies a spray directly on Luke's injured arm, making a soft sound. Almost instantly, the scratches and wounds disappear as if by magic. That leaves our protagonist surprised, and he touches the spot that was healed and asks how that is possible. Smiling, Julia explained that it was medicine made from the celestial flower and it healed wounds very quickly. The Tang family overcame the crisis thanks to Luke, and the father gave shares to our hero. And she even finishes by asking if it isn't amazing to make money without any effort. Our hero smiles, thinking about the money he will still make. And Julia agrees, all happy. Our hero then turns the tables and says that now it's her turn to keep the promise she had made before. And Julia gets all embarrassed, a little confused, asking what kind of promise that would be. He lifts the girl's chin with his finger and slowly brings his face closer, looking into her eyes. The protagonist reminds the girl that she had promised to let him look closely at her face after all this. She exclaims in surprise that she had completely forgotten about that old promise. With a quick movement, Julia pushes Luke, turning her back all embarrassed. Our hero mutters, a little disappointed, and she was going back on her word. At that moment, Hatsune calls him saying, "Hey boss," and he turns to see what it was. Holding a golden sword, she says she found it at the crime scene and asks what our hero should do. He takes that sword and examines it, and he thinks he has seen this sword somewhere before. The blade of the sword shone brightly when pulled slightly out of the sheath. He recognizes this weapon as cutting metal, which was the sword his cousin Annual had bought. Hatsune repeats about the stolen guard, and Luke deduces that someone pretended to be a guard. He asks what the reason would be, and Hatsune answers that she doesn't know, but the only reason she can think of is that they went there to eliminate him. Luke closes the sword sheath with a loud snap. He comments that the assassin ended up disappearing and whoever sent him will deny everything, and Hatsune agrees, saying that exactly nobody will admit they did it. Then he concludes that his cousin really hated him and decides to test him instead of waiting. So he quickly grabs the phone and makes an important call. On the phone he asks Ling to gather some people and get the car ready quickly. On the phone he asks Ling to gather some people and get ready. He ends the call saying let's stir things up. Then the scene cuts to Aniel's fancy mansion where he sleeps wearing a rather extravagant mask. Seriously, a man who sleeps with one of those little masks, for God's sake. He lifts his mask, confused and irritated, wanting to know what that racket was outside. Outside there were some people shouting, "Thanks for the sword, young Master Aniel." And he already gets all nervous. The guy runs to the window and he was still in pajamas shouting to know who was making that scene. Outside we see Luke Hong on top of the hood along with a bunch of bikers, and they were shouting, thanking for the sword. Aniel, he was even gritting his teeth with rage and started cursing our protagonist. Luke orders the gang to keep the bikes revving and continue the provocative shouting. They kept shouting, thanking for the sword, and Aniel furious at the window. He can't take it and calls everyone outside a bunch of idiots. He runs down the mansion still in pajamas, shouting a bunch of incomprehensible curses. Then he starts throwing a tantrum asking what Luke was doing there so early, disturbing his sleep, and our hero keeps smiling with the corner of his mouth. With the sword in hand, our hero tells his cousin to relax, saying they just came to thank him for the unexpected gift. Aniel of course immediately denies everything, and accuses Luke of having stolen his sword and even says he will call the police. Our protagonist pretends not to understand and comments that someone gave him the sword today. Aniel, he insists again that Luke stole his treasure and will call the police, and our protagonist pretends to be nervous. Aniel, he thinks fast and remembers he had no proof and even thinks Luke was just trying to test him by saying those things. Changing tactics, his cousin begins to force a fake smile and says he was half asleep and apologizes, saying that sword is a gift. Luke plays along and starts laughing, saying he knew it was a misunderstanding and that he loved the sword inside. That Aniel guy was crazy, he was even spitting fire, cursing his cousin with every possible word. Luke says that since he got a gift, he needed to return it with another treasure and asks for it to be brought. And Aniel, he gets curious about this mystery. A servant's hand bringing a cloth that covered the mysterious gift, and it was a roasted pig's head on a tray, a very bizarre gift. Aniel loses his composure and starts yelling, pointing at Luke, asking if he was being called a pig. But Luke denies it, saying it was just a gesture of friendship. Our protagonist explains that pigs symbolize wealth and that he was wishing much prosperity to his cousin. Aniel is speechless with so much rage and can only point his furious finger without saying anything. Taking a deep breath, he controls his anger and decides to let it go, but warns that at the clan meeting Luke will bitterly regret it. Our hero doesn't even care about that threat and says it's just a silly meeting. If it's gonna be trouble, he won't even show up because he doesn't care about power or money. Aniel, he gives a sly little smile and warns that this meeting would be very different from the others. His tone showed that he knew something crucial. He explains that the grandfather, the current clan leader, is going to retire and the other uncles will compete to see who will be the new leader. Luke Hong wonders what's the big deal about being the clan leader and even asks a silly question, asking if by chance he will get several waifus. Aniel laughs and mocks, saying the boy got stronger but was still dumb. He says that the leader controls the whole family and asks if Luke thought his family would do well if his father lost. With a malicious look, Aniel still directly threatens, saying that the first thing his father would do if he became the clan leader was to destroy Luke's father. With total confidence, he declares that his father will come out victorious in this dispute. Then he turns his back with disdain and suggests that Luke keep the sword well. Maybe he will need to trade it for food later. Our protagonist thinks about it, and right after he orders his men to leave. Already inside the moving car, Luke presses a discreet button on his technological watch. A very strong light begins to be emitted, and right after he takes on the appearance of his cousin Aniel. Sitting there with the sword, we see that he had transformed into his cousin and could use that for his own benefit. You already know where this is going, right guys? If you're enjoying this story and rooting for our protagonist to beat up his cousin, leave a like and a comment. The scene changes to the next morning, showing a huge and beautiful mansion in classic European style. Inside, the older man, Hong Weigo, who is Luke's father, calmly smokes a pipe. He asks his son if Aniel really spoke about his father's victory and even thinks they are plotting something there to steal that title. Luke says yes, that he had confirmed it. Then his father was a little distressed. Luke doesn't quite understand and asks his father to explain the whole story better. Then his father explains that the other uncles from outside would compete among themselves and the fourth uncle. But ability is not everything. The line of succession also mattered a lot. The main point, his father explains, was succession. Since his son Luke didn't have very good health, the other uncles would vote for Aniel's father, since Aniel, who would be the next to succeed, was healthier. Our protagonist makes a historical comparison and his father agrees, saying that's exactly it. Worried, Luke asks his father what would happen if by chance his uncle ended up winning that line of succession and became the leader. Hong Wei-go reassured the boy, saying that money was not a problem to support them, but he admitted they would lose voice in important decisions. He also added that he would probably have to treat Aniel as a very respectable man, since he would be next in line for succession. Luke already threw his head back, right? Of course he wouldn't want to keep flattering that spoiled cousin of his. Then he thought, I'll have to give my best so that this blockhead doesn't win. Then the scene jumps 10 days. Several luxury cars arrive at the property of the Hong clan leader. A sports car stopped and opened its door in a very flashy way. An elegant woman comes out of that car, and it was that pink-haired girl Yushi, and she was completely well dressed. A man with his family quickly approached to greet her, calling her by name, and a group of women soon surrounded Yushi, praising her beauty and also the great business she had been doing in recent months. Yushi forced a polite smile, thinking that she barely knew those distant relatives, but she decided to just treat them well. Suddenly, a voice announced the arrival of the fourth uncle, causing a stir among the guests. The fourth uncle, Hong Jian, arrives in a green suit and glasses, and he arrived there with his entourage, greeting everyone as if he were the most important guy in the world. Some people rushed to greet him, and taking advantage of everyone's distraction with the uncle's arrival, Yushi sighed in relief, because now those relatives were no longer around her. In the background, whispers could be heard praising Aniel's appearance and commenting on the good genetics inherited from his father. Aniel was surrounded by flatterers who only kept speaking well of him. A very elegant silver car arrived at the place, stopping smoothly and once again attracting the attention of the gathered guests. An assistant promptly opened the door for Hong Wei-go, the fifth uncle, Luke's father, who got out of the vehicle very calmly. Yushi, that pink-haired girl, waved and greeted the fifth uncle. Right after, we see a hand holding a cane, and we already know that our protagonist is pretending to be all sick, but in fact the guy was more powerful than anything. He got out of the car leaning on his cane and limping with Julia helping him. That one is also a great actress. She whispered to Luke, asking why he had a cane since he was healthy. Then he spoke very softly in her ear that it was all part of a play. He thought to himself that he wanted to look weak and sick to catch everyone off guard. Then Yushi greeted Julia and Luke, and our protagonist felt a little awkward because of the acting. The other relatives approached to greet the uncles, and also Luke, calling him strong cousin in a somewhat ironic tone. A woman with a hat kept praising Julia's beauty, and someone commented out loud that it was a pity such a beautiful girl like Julia had to marry a sick weakling like Luke. Aniel approaches with an air of superiority and asks our hero if he was pretending to be worried and what had happened to his leg again. Aniel comes with that superiority and pretends he was worried about our protagonist, asking if he was okay, if he wasn't hurt. And with a handkerchief, Luke made up that he had fallen a few days ago and that his legs weren't steady. Inside, Aniel had a malicious thought, hoping that illness would finish Luke once and for all. Then he tells the others to step away, saying that Luke was too weak and they shouldn't bother him with trivial conversations. He turned to his cousin Yushi and kept inviting her to stay beside his father, since he was saying that his father would be the great winner. Julia intervened immediately, saying that she and Yushi were talking and he shouldn't be interfering there. In private, Yushi advised Julia not to choose the wrong side, reminding her that Aniel's father's chances of winning would be much greater. Julia stared directly at Aniel and questioned if he was already trying to intimidate people even before the leader's choice was made. With a malicious smile, Aniel told Julia it was better she knew who she was walking with, insinuating that she shouldn't be with Luke, or else she would end up in misery. The girl was visibly very irritated and called the guy an idiot, walking away with Yushi and leaving him alone. While he was feeling all victorious, Julia comments to herself that this guy is really a jerk. Luke, he was still pretending to be unwell, and he looked at his cousin and sadly thought how his cousin was diminished just for not being married, and for not having anyone to defend her. Meanwhile, the other relatives kept flattering Aniel. Luke slowly moved away from the group, leaning on his cane, giving those classic coughs, pretending to be sick. Looks like you pretending to be sick just to skip school. He discreetly takes his phone and answers a quick call, and someone on the other side informed him that the scripts were ready to be used. A spy drone quickly crosses the sky. Suddenly, a loud sound of spinning blades caught everyone's attention there. Suddenly, Luke turned back to where Julia and his cousin were talking. Aniel and his group of flatterers also looked up, completely surprised. The helicopter skillfully landed on the grass and a man ended up coming out from inside. It was an imposing man, wearing a white suit and black shirt, and he also had a very well-groomed mustache. Adjusting his Barbie with a superior air, he comments that the place is quite lively. Some children run toward the old man calling him Grandpa. Luke, still pretending to be sick, asks who that guy was and his cousin. She seemed quite surprised. Somewhat worried, she asks if Luke was okay from that illness, and if by any chance it had affected his head. She explains that this is Hong, the head of the Hong family, also known as Hong I-2. He was the one who had built this empire, and the girl remembers that this was also our protag's grandpa. With a somewhat awkward smile, Luke tries to cover up, saying that he got sick, and that's why his memory wasn't very good. In fact, he thought that this was the first time he had reunited with that old man since he had reincarnated in this world not long ago. The fourth uncle, accompanied by his wife, greets his father respectfully. Very strange, the grandfather. He seems younger than his own children. But calm down, you will understand why all of this. Soon after, the fifth uncle and his wife do the same and formally greet the head of the family. Right after, the second and third sons greet the master of ceremonies. He, right beside Hong I-2, instructs all the guests to gather in the auditorium. Inside a large hall, the master of ceremonies invites Hong I-2 to take the seat of honor in the center. Then the old man walks with firm steps to the main seat. Soon after, the person announces the official start of the greeting ceremony. A man brings a small child who quickly kneels before Hong I-2 and greets him, and the grandfather asks the boy to stand up. Hong-al, who is this guy? He wishes his grandfather much health and long life. And he said that these wishes are in his name and his son's, who is Hong I-2's great-grandson. This man, he was called Hong Jal, and he was the eldest grandson of the Hong family, along with his son, who was the little shy boy there. Then the grandfather asks his grandson how things are going in his career, and if he had made progress. Gel replies yes, all happy. Despite the loss of his father, the patriarch reinforces the idea that the family needs to help each other in order to grow even more, and ends up giving a very generous red envelope to the child. He personally hands this envelope to the little boy, who thanks his great-grandfather and is surprised, since that envelope was very fat. Watching that whole scene from afar, Luke thinks that his grandfather, he seems like a very kind guy who values the clan's unity above all. So he decides that in any case it's better to try to make a good impression on him right away. The second son, Hong Jango, accompanied by his foreign family, approaches to greet his father and Hong I-2. He seems to notice the generous red envelope. Luke, he recognizes the uncle, thinking it must be Hong Jango, the one who lived abroad. Luke, he kept analyzing his uncles and thinking which one had the most chances of becoming the new patriarch. He concludes that since the second uncle's family changed nationality, he probably came to present the potential heir, which was his son. The third son, Hong Yugo, he along with his family also formally introduces themselves to his father, and the old man keeps praising his grandchildren. Then it's the turn of the fourth son, Hong Jane, and his son Aniel. The guy stands there all full of himself, excited since they were announcing his arrival. His father closes his eyes, thinking that maybe this is a super important occasion, perhaps even the most important of his life. Suddenly Aniel, he throws himself to his knees on the ground, causing a surprising thud. With an exaggerated movement, he throws himself to the ground, shouting his grandfather's name. His father, he is visibly shocked and very embarrassed. Luke and his group, they were also left with their mouths open, not understanding why he did that. That embarrassing scene continued for a few moments, and Aniel, he remains prostrated there, and everyone kept staring at him. The grandfather finally breaks the silence and starts laughing at that unusual situation. And still with his arms raised on the ground, Aniel declares loudly that he doesn't want the red envelopes like the little kids. Next to Luke, Julia whispers softly that all that exaggerated flattery is clearly an attempt to get more votes. Luke coughs loudly, drawing everyone's attention. That cough ends up interrupting Aniel's little show, and everyone turns around confused. The grandfather, he looks surprised and asks who was coughing. Leaning on the cane, Luke identifies himself as his grandson, and still continues this farce of coughing. He stumbles on purpose and almost falls. And Alvis falls, and all of this was part of his little act. Hongi too, he sees the weakness of his grandson and asks for a chair. And Aniel watches that scene. He is shocked at the attention his grandfather was giving to Luke. And our hero, he refuses the chair and said he just wanted to see his grandfather, and that alone would heal him. The guy was a true suck-up. The grandfather is moved and calls Luke a good boy and laments his condition. He introduces Julia, saying that she is his fiancée. And Hongi too recognizes Julia, and he laughs and mentions the friendship he has with her grandmother. The girl replies politely and accepts the compliments as long as Luke as well. The grandfather, he beams with joy and laughs very loudly and orders a nice fat envelope to be given to her. Luke whispers there to his fiancée, saying that pretending weakness was much more useful, but she doesn't agree much. Aniel back there, he gets gloomy and furious since he was being ignored. Hongi too stands up and gives a speech about family unity and support for the young. He explains that the juniors have the chance to ask for funding for their businesses, and Yuks, she details the processes, announcing her performance in the funding vote. The grandfather, he reinforces that the help is for newcomers with difficulties and not for big businesses. He ends by saying that the meeting will continue later and invites everyone to a dinner. And we see a luxurious mansion where this family dinner was going to take place. The waiters, they carried shiny trays, and a waitress, she walked through the hall ready to serve the food. At the main table was the grandfather along with his sons, who were the uncles of our hero. They were eating and talking. At another table, the relatives enjoyed the meal. Luke Hong encourages Julia to eat a lot since the food there was made with quality ingredients. Aniel at another table, he keeps watching our protagonist with a lot of hatred, and he was planning to humiliate him. Aniel sees the waitress with a soup and has a brilliant idea. Discreetly, he puts his foot in the way to make her trip. The waitress, she ends up losing balance and the soup goes toward Luke. A man near Luke's table ends up getting splashed with hot soup and he starts screaming, saying it hurt a lot. The soup was boiling and he keeps saying he was all burned. The man hit, he ends up removing that bowl from his head. He rips the bowl off furious and covered in food. The fallen waitress, she apologizes, saying she tripped by accident. At the main table, Rangu and the others watch that mess and wonder what happened. The man yells at the waitress, accusing her of having done it on purpose. Aniel, he keeps thinking that luckily no one saw that he caused this accident. However, a little boy points at Aniel and keeps shouting that he had seen this boy put his foot in front. Aniel gets furious and tells the boy to shut up. The boy's uncle, the man from the soup, grabs Aniel by the collar and throws the plate at him. The plate flies and hits the woman at the table, covering her with pasta. She gets furious and the man who threw it apologizes, saying he missed the target. And the other man, he stands up and throws a whole lobster. And so begins a food fight. The woman complains about her expensive hair and another laments his dirty suit. "You hit me. Ah, it sips hot, you bastard. How dare you disrespect me? This food is expensive." Meanwhile, Luke and Julia only watch that chaotic scene of food flying everywhere. The grandfather, he loses his patience and yells for everyone to stop. He speaks very loudly, telling them to stop this shamelessness, and stands up all furious. However, a flying lobster ends up hitting his face head-on. That food sticks to the patriarch's face, who ends up with an even angrier expression. The old man, quite irritated, has his eyes burning with rage. And the scene continues in that chaos with a food war among the relatives. In the middle of the war, a man dodges a jet of blue liquid. And Luke and Julia, they get scared, protecting their heads. He even thinks that it's causing an earthquake. He notices a strange flash blinking rapidly. The bowl in Luke's hand keeps emitting a blue light, and we see that the food battle was still going on. The grandfather, he wipes his furious face, sending everyone to the meeting lobby. The patriarch, he leaves the hall stomping firmly, emanating the authority he had. The people keep looking and they realize the grandfather was really furious. Then the scene changes to minutes later when everyone was already gathering in that hall. Hong Itu was sitting at the head of the table and everyone was silent now. The fourth uncle and Aniel were sitting on one side, and on the other side was the fifth uncle, who was Luke's father, and the other members. With a stern look, Rangito demands to know who started that mess. A woman accuses Hong Tien, and another accuses back, and they keep exchanging accusations. With a serious look, Hong Gitu, he turns to Aniel and asks for an explanation about what happened at dinner. He scratches his head a bit embarrassed and forces a smile, saying that the waitress accidentally tripped on his foot. However, the little boy, he points again at his cousin, and keeps insisting that Aniel did it on purpose. The boy's mother defends Aniel, saying that her son sometimes lies. Yux then comments that the soup was heading toward Luke, but another person ended up being hit. Meanwhile, our protagonist, he stays quiet in his corner, only watching the whole discussion. The other relatives start whispering among themselves, noticing the tense situation that was developing between the cousins. You already know, right guys? A rivalry is building up there between Luke Hong and Aniel. And these guys always end up in trouble when they keep messing with the protagonist. And you're gonna see that revenge will be better than ever. The people comment that Aniel always looked down on Luke Hong and even kept intimidating him, calling him sick boy. Then Aniel, he grinds his teeth in pure anger and even thinks that Brat was exposing him. His father, with a very stern expression, orders Aniel to hurry and apologize. Aniel, he rebels at the moment, saying he will not apologize to a cripple, and even arrogantly states that his father will be the next patriarch. So he would not apologize. The whole room is in absolute shock at the sheer audacity of Aniel's offensive words. The family members whisper among themselves, surprised, and question whether the fourth uncle's election was already decided. They were wondering this because Aniel kept celebrating victory ahead of time. A group thinks that Aniel, he is a complete idiot for saying that. And Aniel panics upon hearing his father slamming his hand hard on the table. The old man, he furiously scolds his son and asks how he dares to argue, and orders him to apologize to Luke right now. Forced by his father, Aniel bows before our protagonist and apologizes. Luke remains in total silence, arms crossed, and Julia nudges him lightly, drawing attention for him to finally respond to his cousin. With a forced and emotionless smile, Luke says it's all right. Right after he becomes thoughtful, a little lost with that discussion, and he looks at his grandfather, imagining what secrets he was hiding. Hong-gi-tu downplays that whole fight and says it is normal for cousins to fight among themselves, and also for brothers to fight for the succession of patriarch. He continues stating that whoever has the best skill and qualification will be recognized. The patriarch asks if by any chance there were combined votes, and Hong-gi-tu denies immediately, saying there weren't. With a quick snap of fingers, Hong signals for the meeting to proceed to the next stage. With firm steps of female heels, someone says to come in. A woman with pink hair and a black suit enters that room. That was Jiol, the patriarch's secretary. Not a fool, that old man, to be honest. She opens a black folder she was carrying to present the data. She explains that she will read the candidate's information. She starts with Hong Tian, who was 23 years old and ranked 36, and received a current profit of 21 million. She adds that his net profit rate rose an impressive 1,000 percentage points, and that was great progress. She finishes the initial reading and asks Hong Tian to present his future planning to those present. Hong Tian, he presents his plan there, which is to develop a new and exclusive private club next year. Luke observes and thinks that this relative of his, he is strong because he does not fear Aniel, and Julia confirms, saying that's right. After the presentation, everyone applauds him. Aniel, however, he thinks with disdain, saying that Tian is incompetent, and even says that he will get rid of him later. Jiol, she announces the next candidate, who was Mu Yuxin. She was 24 years old and was first place in the last 3 years. Her annual projects yield about 75 million, and her profit was increasing every month. Yux, she stands up elegantly and thanks her elder relatives for letting her speak for a brief moment. The relatives start whispering, praising her, saying that she was very beautiful, intelligent, and polite. Another relative comments that he wished he could receive funds so easily like she did last time. Her grandfather praises her publicly, saying that the girl, she always did very well and on top of that met his expectations. Jiol then calls the 9th candidate on the list, none other than Hong Aniel. She informs the data, saying that Aniel is 26 years old and ranked 30, and he had received about 20 million. However, his profit in the last 3 years was 380 million. The room is shocked by those absurd numbers, and even comments that he had grown a lot. He thinks with great arrogance that everyone there fell for his act, since he had been helped by his father. He adds, thinking that his father helped a lot by secretly sending those 300 million. The guy, he was a true charlatan. Luke, he was there watching everything, quiet and thoughtful. Aniel approaches and slams the table in front of Luke, asking in a very irritated way why he was laughing at his achievements. He even keeps pointing his finger at our hero and accuses him of laughing and finding it funny. Then he starts asking Shiel to read Luke's report, wanting to expose him in front of everyone. Then Shiel starts reading Luke, 22 years old, last place, no profits, and a loss of 30 million. Title, Prodigal Son. Both Luke and Julia, they lower their heads simultaneously, looking very embarrassed with this negative report. Some relatives even start laughing very quietly, and some even avert their eyes, clearly embarrassed with the situation. With a mocking laugh, Aniel tells Shiel to continue the reading, telling her to show everyone how much his cousin had wasted. Shiel reads the annual projects, which were a 3-star hotel and 10 steakhouses, quarterly profit of 2 million. Aniel interrupts very loudly, mocking those only 2 million. He even says that Luke keeps losing money. Then the woman continues speaking, saying that he invested in a cinema and TV company, and even produced a movie that was very successful, and even announces that the revenue of the first quarter of these projects was an incredible $900 million. Aniel, he starts mocking, saying that Luke got only 901. However, he had misheard, and the relatives are left wide-eyed, totally shocked by those $900 million. No one believes what they were hearing, and everyone keeps questioning whether this was true or false. Aniel, he is incredulous, and yells that Luke doesn't even know what art is, and keeps accusing that those numbers are fake. Luke, he just shrugs with an expression like, "What can I do, right?" His cousin interprets that gesture as confirmation that he was the king of fraud. He demands that Shiel reveal the other frauds that Luke was committing. Then Shiel, she continues reading. She said that Luke, he cooperated with Delhi for the construction of the only 5-star park in China. He holds 10% of all the shares, and in just half a year he received extremely high dividends. With wide eyes, she reveals the shocking amount, which was 3 billion in dividends. The whole room goes into absolute shock, questioning if they heard that correctly. 3 billion. And Aniel, he is already starting to turn pale, sweating cold, completely speechless. Luke, he smiles, suggesting that Aniel check on Densby's official website in case he had any doubts. Desperate, Aniel. He accuses Luke of using his father's money and keeps yelling, saying that this was impossible. Luke explains relaxed that he bought a land for 10 million to shelter stray dogs. Coincidentally, Aniel needed exactly that land. And Aniel, he remembers this dog accident, and he even gets angry because it was his fault. He then starts stuttering, saying that this was unbelievable. The relatives start whispering, impressed with Luke's cleverness for turning 10 million into 3 billion. They realize that Luke also has real potential to become the future patriarch of the family. Both Luke's father and Aniel's father keep exchanging long looks. Hong, who is the grandfather, he scratches his chin thoughtfully and asks if there is anything else in the report. Sheol, she adds that Luke, he invested in Tang Pharmaceuticals, buying a very rare sacred herb. According to the company, 300 million could be allocated to Luke Hong, and he confirms it right there. The revelation of the additional 300 million leaves everyone jaw-dropped once again. And the grandfather, he bursts out laughing, finding it very amusing. And he even comments that the prodigal turned into the most profitable of all. Sitting Aniel, he is totally paralyzed and very angry. Silence takes over the room and no one dared to applaud Luke after that. Julia comments that Luke, he silenced the whole audience, and no one had the courage to show happiness. He just gives a little smile, calling all that a small scene. The grandfather takes the word, and reminds them that Luke came in first place, but the rule was clear. Whoever already earned a lot of money should step aside and give others a chance, and he asks Luke's opinion. Luke responds respectfully that he has no opinion about his grandfather's wise decision. Then Sheol, smiling, she raises the number 1 sign and announces the official winner. The rookie number 1 this year was Master Hong Jian. He had received congratulations and the prize of about 1 billion, and the flatterers started celebrating. The panel on the screen shows an impressive value of 1 billion. And Aniel, he smiles satisfied, but he thinks that he cannot feel completely happy, since it was unfair. The grandfather announces the discussion of the successor. The 4th and 5th uncle, they are visibly tense waiting for that crucial moment. Both Luke and Julia, they become serious, understanding the importance of the next stage of the meeting. The family members, they watch attentively, waiting for the beginning. He keeps imagining how good it will be when his father wins, since he will be able to keep changing the rules and control everything. Hong Yitu, he begins his speech, and he reminds of the humble beginning the family had, since they struggled a lot to get where they are. He also says that there are many talents in the family, and proposes to decide the voting in 3 rounds. The only condition for heir was to be good in morals, intellect, physical, and art. Kong Yitu, he signals to Shiforl and she confirms with an okay. She explains the rule of the 3 rounds. The 3 most voted candidates will go to the next stage. The 3rd round will be the final vote to decide the new head of the Hong family. And she continues informing that the candidates' avatars are on the tablets. A tablet on the table displays the little photos of the candidates, and Shiforl, she instructs them to click on the avatar to be able to vote. If 10 minutes pass and you haven't voted, your participation will be cancelled. Then, we see some of the candidates. She reinforces that the vote is totally anonymous, so they could vote without any pressure. With a smile, Shiforl, she gives an okay and announces the countdown. Julia asks Luke if she can also vote, even though she is not from the clan. He responds that sooner or later she will be part anyway, and she makes a cute face agreeing with his logic, since they will get married. With a playful smile, Julia says that she will not vote for him as leader. Luke, he looks back a little surprised by her unexpected statement, and the girl makes a face with her tongue out without giving further explanations about her vote. Kong Tool notices the delay and questions the room, asking why no one voted yet. The 2nd uncle, he remains in total silence, looking very thoughtful. He opens his eyes discreetly, as if he were evaluating the whole situation. And the 4th uncle, he tries to bribe his brother mentally, offering valuable lands. The 2nd uncle, he just mutters without revealing anything about his votes. Other family members also react with a simple murmur. And Hong Jian, he tries the same tactic with the 3rd uncle, reminding him of the old friendship they had. He brags about being profitable, and promises half of the overseas business if he would support him now. The 3rd uncle, he just mutters, keeping neutrality in the fierce dispute. The other relatives, they keep noticing that uncle was trying to bribe the votes. And Shiforl, she announces that the time is up and asks to display the results on the big screen immediately. Expectation takes over the room, and on the screen it shows the 4th uncle with 52 votes. Right behind, the 5th uncle with 31 votes, and Luke surprisingly received only 1 vote. Laughter echoes from the 4th uncle's side, celebrating the clear leadership in the 1st round. The scoreboard shows Luke's avatar with his single and mysterious vote. Who could have voted for our pro tag? Aniel turns to Luke, laughing loudly and mocking that single vote he had received. He even asks who would happen to vote for Luke, calling him cripple and unqualified. He still continued provoking our hero, saying that a cripple does not deserve the title of patriarch. Luke, he just observes these provocations with his hand on his chin, without showing any reaction. Julia, indignant, she rebuts Aniel, saying that her fiancé, even being sick, he received votes. But Aniel, who was healthy, did not receive any votes, and the relatives there at the table with Aniel hold back their laughter, and even comment that this boy, he is very rude. Luke asks Julia if it was her who voted for him, but the girl denies it. She said she voted for our hero's father. Chifoil, she announces the end of the first round and the beginning of the second round, which would be the speech stage. The fourth uncle, he stands up promptly and offers to start the speech first. He thanks for the support received and recalls the family's difficulties to get where they are today. And he continues the speech remembering when he was a child and did not even have meat to eat. He swears that the Hong family must grow even stronger so that everyone can live very well, and ends by saying that even if he is not elected, he believes they can do even better together. Hong Jian, he ends his speech moved and bows respectfully before the main table. The audience, they listen attentively, visibly touched by the uncle's emotional speech. It is time for the fourth son, and he gives a discreet smile, very confident in his calculated strategy. However, surprising everyone, he recommends voting for the fifth brother Hong Weigo, his rival. He said that he is old and with health problems and affirms that his younger brother is at his peak now. Hong Jian, he ends thanking, and Aniel is shocked and scolds his father for the unexpected tactic. Luke analyzes the uncle's move that created compassion and came out on top like a nobleman, and even says that he is a cunning fox. The voting restarts and the members begin clicking on their tablets at the table. The scoreboard shows Hong Jian rising to 69 points, while Hong Weigo was with only 14 points. Aniel and his father discreetly celebrate the overwhelming victory in this second round. And Hong too, he says that the difference in votes is very large, and asks if the fifth uncle has something to say. Hong Weigo, he stands up calmly and answers, "Yes, father. There is something I want to say." He said that he is incompetent compared to his brother, and reluctant to assume the leadership. He affirms that he has two important things to say to everyone there at that decisive moment. The first bombastic statement is that he officially gave up the competition for leadership. The room explodes in shock, and Aniel thinks that now they had won. Hong, with a serious and penetrating look, he asks what the second thing is, and Hong Weigo begins to say he asks permission to transfer all his votes directly to Luke Hong. He compliments his shocking decision and asks to let him choose the next patriarch of the family. The scoreboard then changes again. Hong Weigo's votes go to Luke, totaling 15 points. The room is shocked again, and Aniel, he together with his father, they do not believe what was happening. The relatives begin whispering confused without understanding anything and ask if Luke can run being so young. Hong Jian, he gets furious and asks if his brother was serious about letting a junior compete. The fifth uncle, he continues speaking and admits that he was inferior in the matter of youth. However, he had a lot of experience. He praised his own son, saying that even if he were from another, he would still praise that boy. He remembers that just 6 months ago Luke was almost dying in the hospital without hope, but a miracle had happened. Luke woke up and changed his image of prodigal son quickly. In just 6 months he generated more profit than most of the other sons who were there. Then he concluded saying that this was pure destiny. He had no faith in Luke, but rather faith in the destiny that guided him. Aniel, he gets furious and accuses his uncle of being superstitious and questions the logic of this decision. Hong Jian, he also gets very irritated and accuses his brother of being a joker and insulting the family. He says that he will play along, so he will give his votes to Luke, leaving Luke and Aniel in the dispute. The scoreboard changes once again, and the old man ended up giving his own votes to his son. Aniel almost falls from his chair shocked, thanking ironically his father for the help. The room explodes in total chaos, and they begin commenting that this meeting turned into a joke. Aniel yells desperately, turning to his father, and asks what he had to say about this. Hong too, he declares that the voting could not be reversed now and no matter the final result. Both brothers, they announce loudly that they do not regret their decisions. The grandfather, he ponders the situation, recognizing the unlimited potential of the young Aniel and Luke. He believes that with the help of the elders they can be competent even better. Jill, she announces the second round of discussion, Luke versus Aniel, and decides who will start the speech. Aniel, he stands up abruptly from the chair and yells that he himself must start the speech. He recognizes that Luke surprised everyone, but says that he needs to say something very important about him. He begins to disqualify our hero, affirming that he does not meet the requirements of morals, physique, and art demanded. He questions how they could choose someone who carries the infamous name of Prodigal Son. He still says that it would be a very great shame for the Hong family. Comparing Luke with himself, he says that he is much superior. He appeals to the relatives, saying who would they choose? Would they choose someone healthy or some crippled guy? This guy here is worth nothing, folks. Seriously, this guy makes me angry. He even questions if they would choose someone who can barely walk. The relatives begin whispering again, and some agree that Annual he is more stable, and others think Luke is very unpredictable. The scoreboard shows Annual rising in the vote, and he reaches the mark of 80 votes while Luke drops to 4 votes. Annual begins to laugh with disdain and says that everyone is very smart and even smarter than he imagined. He reaffirms that Luke does not meet the criteria and calls him disabled. With eyes shining with malice, he promises to change the rules and expel Luke Hong from the family if he becomes patriarch. He declares himself the future of the family and gives a diabolical laugh. Yuke, the cousin, she thinks desperately, asking Luke for strength because she cast her vote on him. So we see that it was this girl who had given the only vote to our hero at the beginning. Yuke, she closes her eyes, seeming very disappointed with Annual's low and cruel speech. Hong too, he turns to Luke and asks what he has to say to get more votes. Luke, he just closes his eyes calmly and responds that he has absolutely nothing to say. Annual, he bursts into loud laughter thinking he won the dispute and declares the end of the round. He proclaims himself the genius heir who integrates all the necessary qualities. He continues laughing, all confident that no one else will vote for Luke and his victory would be guaranteed. At this moment, Joel, she approaches the grandfather and whispers something important in his ear. The old man, he asks if there is any problem, and she confirms that she saw news and asks to turn on the television. Someone in the room asks what happened and if they want to display something important now. The fourth uncle, he was about to vote, but she asks him to wait a little and look at the big screen. The big screen displays an old video. In it, Annual, even younger, was drunk fighting in the street. He kicks the fruits of a fallen vendor and yells that he will not pay for the watermelons. Annual in the video continues putting on his little show, shouting his own name and saying that he is a bastard. He yells that his father Rongian was also a bastard. And that revelation was shocking. The audience there, they remain without understanding what the hell was happening. And Annual in the video with arms open continues saying that he together with his father were bastards. Annual there in the room, he turns pale, sweating cold, not believing. The fourth uncle, he explodes in fury, asking who posted that on the internet. He demands that they call the public relations agencies, outraged at exposing family matters. The members, they are shocked and whisper, recognizing that Annual's arrogant behavior in that video was not worthy of a patriarch. They even comment that this attitude shames the family and question if he was using chemical substances. Then she shows another even more compromising video of Annual showing off. In those images, he ends up harassing Julia in the middle of the street, slapping her, and the girl even screams. Annual asks if she doesn't see that Luke was a cripple and therefore she could not be with him. With a shameless smile, Annual says that Luke will not be able to satisfy the girl, and the video ends with Annual giving a malicious laugh and the whole room is in shock. The relatives are horrified, asking how Annual had the courage to do that with his cousin's fiancée. They consider that a terrible scandal and question this guy's sanity and if he deserved to be the patriarch. The fourth uncle remains in absolute silence with a dark and furious look. Julia shrinks into Luke's arms crying, saying that it was posted on the internet and that she feels lost. Luke's father, he confronts his brother and asks how he explains Annual now. Julia angrily keeps saying that this guy is worth nothing. And Hong, he yells at Annual, calling him filthy beast and demands an explanation. Annual, he denies all that and says that the videos are fake. However, his father rebuts and says that he is a disgrace. Desperate, Annual. He begins yelling at Luke, saying that he is behind all this. Our hero responds with an ironic smile and asks if it was not him in that video that was being exposed. Annual, crying with rage, he points his finger at Luke, accusing him of setting it all up to humiliate him. With a cold look, Luke rebuts and recalls that Annual sent an assassin to kill him first. The room becomes even more agitated. Right? What do you mean an assassination? Grandfather ITU, he casts a penetrating look and asks directly to Annual. Annual sarcastically, turning his back as if he did not care much about that. With a sinister smile, he says that he only wanted to break Luke's leg, but now that did not matter anymore. He grabs that chair, showing that he is going to try to attack our hero. Then he stands up with that chair over his head, and yells that he has not liked Luke since he was born, and threatens to finish off our hero right now, saying that there cannot be a Hong family descendant who is crippled. He throws the chair with all his strength in Luke's direction. Someone thinks quickly that our hero's fragile body will not withstand that impact, and he will lose his life. Luke, he remains seated while the chair flies in his direction. He grabs his cane quickly, and it transforms into a sharp metal sword. In a fast move, Luke stands up and cuts that chair in half with his sword. Aniel, he is paralyzed in shock to see that his attack failed miserably. Luke, with a cold and calculating look, he says that he only feels sorry for his cousin. With the sword in hand, he advances and strikes several quick blows at Aniel's suit. The guy's suit rips into pieces, revealing that he had a tattoo on his chest. That tattoo was of a not very nice symbol, and the relatives are even more horrified. Others comment shocked when did he tattoo that and that his values were not in accordance with the Hong family. Aniel falls to his knees on the ground, totally exhausted and completely defeated. Luke, he puts away the sword and says that it was Aniel who started the whole fight. Hong Etu, he orders to take Aniel for investigation, and the guards drag him out of the room. The grandfather turns to Luke and questions his body, and Luke explains that he only pretended that he was sick. In fact, he was very healthy. He apologizes for deceiving everyone with his acting, and the relatives begin whispering surprised with Luke's recovery and comment that he was very fast in those strikes. Yuxi smiles and says that she is very happy and relieved to see that her cousin was healthy. His grandfather comments that things went beyond expected, but the succession needed to continue. He informs that Aniel, he is on the list and maintains the votes from the second round leading. Shell announces that the start of the final round will begin and asks for care when voting. The relatives begin whispering about Aniel. Luke's scoreboard begins to rise quickly with the votes being transferred to him. The final scoreboard shows Luke with 84 votes, an impressive comeback. A voice announces, "Congratulations, Master Luke, you are the new head of the Hong family." The family members applaud Luke for his victory, and with a discreet smile he thanks the applause of everyone present in the room. His father, he applauds with a very proud smile, saying that he already knew of his son's potential. The grandfather, he also seems satisfied and confirms the victory with a resounding okay. Later, Luke and his grandfather, they talk alone, sitting while the fireworks light up the night. Luke fears not being a good chief since his ambition is not that big. His grandfather says that he expected and assures that he will be the best to take care of the family. He still emphasizes that the identity of patriarch is an essential springboard for Luke to grow. Luke reflects and thinks that his grandfather expects something very grand from him while he only wanted to have fun. He wonders what he can really do that is important in this life he has now, and the grandfather stares at him and affirms that surely of course he has to do something very big. Hong-etu, he reveals the shocking secret and says that the boy has a different system in his body. Luke, he is totally astonished, not believing what his grandfather had just said. And meanwhile, the fireworks illuminated the sky. Still in shock, Luke asks how his grandfather knew about that system. And to continue the suspense, the fireworks kept exploding outside. He asks his grandfather, totally incredulous, how his grandfather knew about that prodigal son system. And with a mysterious air, his grandfather responds calmly, saying, because it was grandfather who prevented someone from doing it. Luke Hong becomes even more confused, right? What do you mean? What does that mean? His grandfather says that what he is going to say now will leave him even more surprised. Well, boy, in fact, the real Luke Hong is dead. A flashback then begins in the mansion where the parents were taking care of Luke, who was very sick. The wife asks to call old Hong quickly because the situation was serious. Luke of the past was pale and lying in bed with many medical devices. His grandfather, he arrives running and desperate, asking what happened to his grandson Luke. Hong Weigo, he states that the situation got worse, and the doctors said that he would not last more than 3 days. The grandfather laments and remembers that Luke was poisoned when he was a child, and since then he had very fragile health. He says that poor Luke was the smartest and most well-behaved boy in the Hong family. Then his grandfather declares forcefully that he will not let Luke die like that in any way. He thinks about seeking the Shua organization and would like to keep Luke alive somehow. The scene changes to a modern building with the name Tem Game. Inside the building, Luke's real body was in an advanced technological chamber. The scientists, they explain that they collected data from the sick body. In addition, much memory data was lost, requiring a slow and careful recovery. The grandfather, he asks if this method will really keep his grandson alive. The scientists, they confirm and say they will create a world exactly the same as this real world. And he laments that when they finished Luke, he would no longer be alive, and his memories would be lost. But the scanning could keep him alive as if he were data, and his grandfather could store that data. Basically, he would be alive in an artificial simulation. Hong-etu, he questions shocked if this would mean that his grandson would be just digital data. The scientists, they affirm that yes, but this world would be a perfect replica of the real world. Even the people and feelings would be the same. With tears in his eyes, Hong-etu asks them not to let the disease torment him anymore, and begs them to help him live healthy in that new virtual world that had been created. The scientist explains that they can create an upgrade system to improve him alone, making our hero gain more strength. A colleague complains that the grandfather demanded too much and that they would have to work all night since the boy would only have 2 more days to live. The old man, he approves this idea of an upgrade system with great enthusiasm. Then the scene returns to the house where Luke was already very debilitated. The maids try to calm Hongetu, and Luke's mother cries desperately for her son. The image already shows the lifeless body of our hero. And meanwhile in that company we see a space shuttle being launched. A robotic voice announces a countdown, and thus a rocket is launched into the skies, and the old man watches his grandson. He thinks to himself, "Yeah, Luke, this is all Grandpa can do for you now. I hope you are well in this new world that I created only for you." Luke's body was in the space shuttle. A satellite is carefully released into the vast and silent outer space. The satellite, it activates its complex systems and begins scanning planet Earth below. It fires a beam and begins scanning the entire planet to make an identical copy. The system's voice announces that the copy was successful, and it was time to enter the replica world. Thus the data is transmitted to the digital world. Luke's sleeping face now takes on a new form and is bathed in a blue light. His body begins to return to normal, and thus he gains consciousness. Suddenly Luke sits up in bed, gasping. He looks at his own body, surprised by his healthy physical condition. Right after that, he mentally activates his new power. System activate. The grandfather explains that in the replica world Luke, he will be safe because the system had saved him from death. Luke's still shocked, he thinks, right? How so? In fact, then I am only soldiers of a computer. His grandfather confirms, saying that is exactly it, and even says that the story in this world ended up changing, because here he was alive, since in the real world his grandson was dead. Luke asks if his parents, Julia and all the others, also had their data copied. His grandfather replies that yes, but they have real feelings and sensations from this world. With his head in his hands, Luke asks his grandfather to stop, because he needed to digest all this. The wooden door is closed. Luke, he was leaning against the door with a thoughtful look. He murmurs to himself, trying to process all this information because it seemed like it wasn't true. Seriously guys, did you imagine it would be something like this? I was quite shocked. Luke, he begins to think that all this in fact is false and questions how the world can imitate reality. He thinks that the real enemies were also copied and they were in this new world also trying to eliminate him. Then he questions himself, right? How to explain the system, these phenomena that are happening. So probably what his grandfather said was true, because in the real world there was nothing of powers. Julia softly calls Luke's name and he responds somewhat distracted. She asks why he was standing there and calls him silly, saying that everyone is waiting. Luke looks at Julia and keeps repeating her name in his thoughts, perhaps thinking about her existence. Julia notices that he was a little strange and asks what happened. Luke, he suddenly hugs his fiancée, catching her by surprise. He holds her tightly in his arms, seeking comfort or simply confirmation that she was real. Julia, she blushes, asking why he hugged her like that, out of nowhere, and even comments that someone could see them like that. The poor of our hero. He rests his face on her shoulder and comments that the girl's body was soft and warm. She replies saying that she is not a dead person, so of course her body would be warm. Luke moves away a little, smiling, says that yes, they are alive. They are really very alive. He pulls her by the hand and says to go quickly to the banquet, and she laughs at his agitation. While they walk, Luke thinks that this replica world has very real emotions. At the banquet, Luke raises the glass and thinks that he wants to live and take very good care of Julia and also eliminate his enemies. He takes a sip while the other guests also toast and enjoy the party. Back in the room, Luke complains in bed about the system and the upgrade cost. He suspects that the programmer who created this system was from an online gaming company. He sprawls on the bed totally exhausted after so many emotions and also having discovered the whole system. But soon he recovers and thinks that he needs to face reality and become even stronger to face these enemies. If you made it this far, leave your like, comment part 3. This work is getting really good, guys. Let's set the goal of 30 comments and 1,000 likes. And I will leave as a recommendation a work here in the card. Watch it there because this work is really good. Other than that, that's it. Thanks and see you later, folks.